All right. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to 100. Oh, man, that was awful. I'm not even going to cut that out. Welcome to episode 184 of the Bench Time Podcast with Todd and Brett Wiley of Wiley Scale Modeling. As we hinted last week, we have a guest on who we were just talking with him. We just did a whole podcast, guys, before we hit record. We have Bernard from Miniprints, who we have not had on in almost 2 years exactly to the day. Well, close to it.
Yeah. Yep.
So welcome on to the show, Bernard. Thank you for coming on again.
Well, thank you. Time flies.
We didn't scare you away enough the first time, I guess, so you came back.
It's Bernard Hellen. Everybody
yes.
knows it needs to know, but yes.
Yeah, I guess, it's been 2 years, so I guess I've forgotten how traumatic the first one was, and I'm ready to do it again.
Well,
what did they say? Time heals all wounds?
Time heals?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was your nightmare experience the last time, right? Now,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. May I have another?
Oh boy. Well, we had a lot of fun last time, and I got a million things to talk to you about this time. We want to get into the things that are going to be going on, the things that you have going on, the new things that we have. Of course, we'll explain what, for the people that hadn't listened before. Bernard here has the Miniprintscom, and it's where he makes HO. Is it HO and O scale or just HO scale?
Everything is available in HOS and O scale.
Okay.
So all three scales. And most everything is available in N scale as well. So
okay,
and some, believe it or not, some G scale.
Oh wow, yeah,
yeah. So pretty much anything you want.
Yeah. So it's and he's making figures, like figures for animals, human figures, animals, all kinds of objects and things he's getting into. And we got some special things that that's new to. We're going to cover all that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences and maybe get some tips and pointers from him on painting. And I don't think we got into that too terrible much last time. So we're going to do a little bit of that this time. How we paint them and the things we do and the things that he does and some of his customers have done that he's got. Maybe he can expel some knowledge on us how to make better. Prepare and paint better figures. So, we'll welcome with us.
Great.
Glad to have you.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Well,
a lot has changed in 2 years.
Yes,
it certainly has. I'm looking at your website as we're doing this. So once I get rid of this Skype telephone looking thing, and why is that on top? And who cares? Let's go to. One of the things that I noticed that you had birds last time, a ton of birds, right? And you had domestic animals. You've had that. And I know you've added some land animals, as you've always had land animals, and you've added to that, I believe, since the last time we talked to you, of course. But I don't recall the aquatic animals. Did you?
No, everything's really grown. I mean, when we first talked 2 years ago, the company was probably only about 8 months old. And we're coming up on 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
So, so this April 1st will be our 4th year anniversary. So we weren't even a year old when we first talked 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow.
And I think that, it was pretty much birds and animals, like when we first talked. And that's as if people go back and listen to, I don't know what episode it was way back when, I think it was like in the 160s or something.
Uh-huh.
But what's that?
No,
we disagreed with you.
We were just confirming, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 159. I just looked at it. Episode 159. The 8th of January in 2021. So back then, I mean, the company started in April. So the company had only been going for, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So it hadn't been a full year. And it started with, as we talked about back then, it started with my my desire to find an HO scale beaver, for my own layout.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it really did start with, the birds and the animals. And since then, I keep adding categories. So there's so much new stuff. I'd say most of the stuff you see on the website now wasn't around when we talked last.
Yeah, I'm seeing that right now. That's really a big growth in the span of the 2 years. But that's insane.
And I mean, I try and list 2 or 3 new things every week at minimum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't, I'm not thinking about the math on that, but I mean, if it's a couple things a week times 52 weeks,
mm-hmm.
It's at least a couple hundred a year.
Yeah.
So times 2 years. So, yeah, I would say the vast majority of stuff there is stuff that, that we can talk about that wasn't there before. And it has definitely gotten a little weirder.
I can see that.
I mean, it started strange. It started strange, and it's gone completely off the rails.
And you do a lot of things by request, right?
Yeah.
As I'm browsing,
I think I'm known as
I'm browsing, talking about weird as I'm browsing, and we can talk about this in more detail later. Listening to you, and I'm just kind of, perusing through your site. I see the Oddities page, which is full of weird.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite. Yeah.
My favorite one on there might be a tie between the Plague Doctor and the moderately agitated mailboy. I don't know why that one's funny to me, and there's probably a story behind it, but that's my favorite looking one.
Yeah. Oh, there is a story behind that for sure.
Oh, and yeah. Well, we're going to get to that.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what, over the last 2 years, that's kind of what we've been known for, mm-hmm. is that, everybody out there can do cinder blocks or mailboxes or garbage cans. And, there's no doubt that in the last 2 years, there have been more and more people out there sort of doing that. But that's no fun, right?
Right.
The fun stuff is, like for me anyway, the fun stuff is, can you do a set of gargoyles to go on either side of my, Halloween house or something that's just, you're never going to see anywhere else.
No.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm looking at the gargoyles now that you brought that up. And that would be just cool to get them and sit them on top of a house, on top of a city building. At the top,
Exactly. Well, that's just it. I mean, I've had people put them on like skyscrapers, like, they're modeling like New York skyscrapers.
Yeah.
So they put them on all 4 corners, like, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, mm-hmm. yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Now, what's the deal with Fred the Sock?
Okay, so Fred the Sock, there's a podcast out there, and this is actually this is a really a new part of the business that has started since we last spoke. But I've really gotten into people because mm-hmm. I think for what I was doing, there's a real lack of good modern railroaders out there. So I really like the whole notion of contemporary figures. I remember at one point we were talking, it might have been 2 years ago, about how, there are a lot of great European figures out there that are fantastic quality, but they look very European.
We were talking about that
on our layouts.
We were just talking about that.
I have an Oompa band, and I don't. It's an unpainted Oompa. What the hell am I going to do with an Oompa band?
Well, that's really between you and yourself. I mean, I'm not going to get involved in what to do with an Oompa band.
There's websites for that, Dad. You can go to find those on your own.
Yeah, I'm not one to judge. That's that's between you and the Oompa band. But it certainly doesn't fit my era or my geography. So there is a podcast out there that you guys might have heard of called A Modeler's Life.
Yes.
And so my very first live scan of a figure was Lionel from A Modeler's Life.
Okay.
And to answer your question, Ed the Sock is one of his characters.
Gotcha.
So that is a recurring character on that podcast. I'm sure we'll talk about this in the future, but since then, I've gone on to scan a number of YouTubers and podcasters out there, and you can find those.
I think was that on the Mini-Me's
called. That is correct. Yeah, Mini-Me's. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was down in Timonium. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here.
No, that's fine.
But I was down in Timonium, and I had the chance to meet some friends down there. Some other folks that are broadcasting, Rick the Tree, Sparky 107, Tom of Tom's Trains and Things, a gentleman named the Plumber, Stephen Heath is a gentleman from a show called Humanity Junction. I'm sure I'm missing some people, but I've started to get into this whole sort of, scanning people. I would absolutely love to scan the two of you. I think that would be a hoot. So we're have to find a time and a place where we all get together.
That'd be great.
And so that's really where, and you mentioned the moderately agitated mailboy. He falls into that whole category of, sort of celebrity scans, we'll call them.
Gotcha. I just like his whole, I like his demeanor, the way he looks. Like, it's just like
absolutely.
And those kind of characters, like there's a skateboarder, the plumber, I think his name was.
Yeah.
But Ed the agitated mailboy, I think that was just he'd be fun. Like, you could put him on a dock. I could put him on a little street corner, just sitting on a crate. Like, that's such a I love that character because it would fit in anywhere.
Sitting in front of the convenience store. Well, it's really funny. Two things that I've noticed: real people look like real people, and model railroad figures don't look like real people.
Right?
No.
Like, nothing beats the real thing.
No, you're right.
That makes sense.
It's awesome you're doing that.
I started off modeling people in software. And software is a pretty crappy way to model people because people aren't symmetrical. They don't stand, symmetrically. Like, when you model someone on the computer, it's too perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Left sides match right sides. And in reality, people aren't symmetrical. They're not the way you would think they are. So I have found that, you actually get a better model railroad figure when you start with a real human being as opposed to your perception of a human being.
Right.
Right. Sure.
I mean, and
the cool thing,
well, Bernard, that kind of goes along with like, any of the newer AI tools that you have. I don't know if you've experimented with any of them. My dad and I talked about this a week or so ago, not on the show, just personally, but like the computer brain and AI brain or whatever you're doing modeling wise, not our type of modeling, but like computer modeling is good.
Sure.
But there's no substitute for a human inputting that data. AI is good.
Really weird,
but not that good.
The funny thing is that this is the third time that exact conversation has come up in the last 24 hours.
Really?
3 different people. It's funny, because someone last night, there was a YouTuber, actually it was Heath, on his show, and it was kind of clever. He was asking, there's this new chat AI, this chat bot that's
Chat GPT.
Artificial intelligence, and that's it. So he had a show on, and it was actually quite interesting. He had a show on YouTube last night where his celebrity guest was Chat GPT, and he invited the audience to ask the chatbot model railroad questions. And some of them were like surprisingly accurate. And other ones either were just completely wrong or made up.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounded really convincing. And I'd read an article a couple of weeks ago that said you can't really trust Chat GPT because he lies. Like, he thinks it sounds very plausible and he thinks he's telling you the truth, but you don't really know whether what he's telling you is the truth or what he's telling you is the truth. Like, half the stuff is just made up stuff.
I agree.
It's like if you go to Wikipedia and you go to you search for something. A lot of that stuff is put in, well, all of it, by humans. The details, the facts, and it can be changed. I can go in there,
Well, some of it,
and
you
change some of it.
Wikipedia has been locked down for the most part widely, but this is not. This is you interacting with a computer.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and the risk there is with ChatGPT is it sounds very plausible, but you don't really know whether or not he's citing a report that actually exists, or whether he just made the whole thing up.
Wow.
So it's really funny that you mentioned that because, I mean, and it's nothing really beats, and I guess the key point here is people like dealing with people, and nothing really beats. If you're modeling anyway, model from reality, model from real people.
Right. Yeah. Now, before we go any further, I need our listeners here to know.
Went down the rabbit hole.
We did.
No, but we're going to go there again, I'm sure. But before we get any further into it, I need to explain to our listeners that if you've never been to Miniprints and you haven't seen these figures, the animals, the people, go there, do yourself that favor and go there. You are not going to find, as far as I can tell, in our experience in model railroading, I've not seen or dealt with the quality and detail that you're getting with these figures. In no way, shape, or form have I seen anything quite like it. That's why I've been using them now lately, this last couple of weeks for my diorama. But it's definitely unique. It's definitely cool that you can go there. And if I need a bear for something in the woods in my thing, I could go to Walder's or one of these places and try and find animals. But I'm not going to be, if I get the bear, I'm also going to get like 6 deer and a platypus and some other shit, right? But with this, I get the bear, right? And I get it in detail. And that's what I want. I can go through and I can pick out one animal here, one animal there, and I'm not getting a box of animals like some sheep and other things that I'm never going to use. Okay, I get what I want, and the detail is far better quality. So definitely go there. We'll continue and check it out. But I just wanted to have that said before we go any further. And we have really no endorsement here or any deal other than we're friends with Bernard. But outside of that, it's not like we're promoting his product or anything else. I am out of my experiences with that, so that's what it is. It comes because I genuinely feel great about this product. So,
well, thank you. That's kind. And I mean, I'm a modeler too, so I would never ever send anything out that I wouldn't want on my own layout. And I'm kind of a little OCD or perfectionist, or I don't know what word you'd use, but I kind of have high standards for my layout, so I wouldn't want to send something out the door, with my name on it for your layout, if I didn't want to put it on my own.
Great.
Quality is important,
and you can tell,
Mm-hmm.
Now I got a question on one of your products that I did not think. I don't think I saw before. Was the aquatic animals? Is that relatively new? Because I don't recall them, or maybe because I wasn't looking for them. I don't remember 2 years ago if the fish were available.
I don't remember either, to be perfectly honest, but I can tell you that one thing always leads to another. So you'll add in lobsters, and then someone will say, well, can you do crabs? And then you'll add in crabs, and then someone will say, like, I had a request for crab pots. So I did 100 sort of, crab pots for someone. They're not up on the site yet. But one thing always leads to another. So my suspicion is, like, I remember we talked about the Loch Ness Monster last time. So I have probably added significant things. The other thing that tends to happen is things get reorganized. So, I might have had one aquatic animal, 2 years ago, but then enough requests came in that it became a category.
Gotcha.
So I'm always adding. And I'm always adding exactly as you said. You're 100% correct. It's based on, people requesting things. Okay. I mean, you just mentioned platypuses. I don't have platypuses. So,
I just threw that
a huge market. If you want a platypus, I'm your guy.
Yeah, I was just checking that. I was just throwing something.
I think there is new stuff.
Yeah,
I think there is new, because I remember someone requested manatees because they were doing a Florida scene, and so I would say they're probably pretty much in every category. There's probably new things, even in some of the original, like birds, for example.
Right.
That was one of the earliest categories. But one of the most recent birds in there is the California condors. Those were just added probably within the last 6 months, because I had a request for California condors.
Wow.
I had owls in there before. That was an early one. But that someone specifically requested great horned owls.
Right.
So those are new. So, they're always, evolutions. I probably had Canada geese 2 years ago, but then someone will come in and say, can you do flying Canadian geese? Or actually, interestingly, someone this week said, you've got Canada geese standing and sitting, you've got Canada geese flying, but can you do a Canada goose, like, with the head down eating grass?
Huh.
So even if there's an existing animal, someone might want a slightly different version of it.
Right. Now, when you create this graphic, okay, or you create this figure, let's say the Canadian geese with the head down eating.
Yeah.
Do you go off of photography that you find on something along that lines? How do you base that?
Well, yeah.
Obviously, you're not getting a goose to go out there and pose for you, right? The goose isn't going out.
Anything is. The geese are pretty nasty, so no. I might get my dog to pose for me, but yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. So for the Canada geese, and I was thinking about that just as an example. Mm-hmm. I'll look at some pictures, but for the Canada geese, because I already have them standing, and that was one of the very first ones. It's a very early, mini print. It was, I think it was one of the first requests, other than, the beavers were the very first. What I'll probably do is I'll start with the Canada geese standing, and then see, is there a way that I can tilt the body and elongate the neck? So I'll build off of the existing model. Okay. And then if that doesn't look right, then I'll have to start from scratch.
I gotcha.
But I'll start with modifying what I've got.
I don't know if we talked about this 2 years ago, or forgive me for not remembering everything we talked about exactly 2 years ago. But what is your process basically for, I contact you and I go, hey, Bernard, I would like a, whatever. I would like a fisher. Do you guys have fishers up in Toronto?
Yeah, they're kind of like weaselly, sort of Wolverine.
They're not very common, but
nasty. Yeah, they're kind of like nasty. They're like minks, aren't they? Like little sort of like long, thin rodent type things.
Yes. Yeah. So what I do is I email you and I say, hey, I would like a fisher. I want a fisher because I'm trying to do a fur trapper scene or something.
Sure.
Now, what's your process? And if there's anything proprietary, please don't tell us. But what's kind of your process?
The first thing I'm doing right now, first thing I do is I go to Google and I see what a fisher looks like. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of mink-like. It's kind of otter-like. Like, I'm kind of looking at it and going, okay, number one, have I done it before? No. Number two, what does it look like? Okay, yeah, it's cool. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like a cross between a bear and an otter. It's like
no
long
wonder
and
damn thing's
thin,
nasty.
It is. It's a weird looking animal. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, is this like a one-off, or is there sales potential for it? So I'm like, it's kind of cool. So I kind of looking at it, thinking, how hard would it be? How common would it be? Would other people want it? Do I have something that looks like it?
Right.
Interestingly, it's an animal that I have not done, and I'm kind of running out of animals.
Okay.
So I would say, yeah.
So you put a spark in his head.
I was going to say it's kind of a contender. The other thing I look for is how big it is, right?
Right.
Because I typically don't really like to do animals that are smaller than 1 foot.
Okay.
Because 1 foot in HO scale is pretty small.
Yeah. I think it's bigger than a beaver, though.
I think it was definitely longer.
Yes.
And then the next question I say is, how many do you want? And what's your budget?
Right. Gotcha.
But
well,
yes.
no, so I meant more of like,
usually,
how do you get them into the 3D world without giving away anything that you do? I mean, I don't want you to give away anything, but like, what's the process? Are you modeling them or?
Sure. Yeah, they're different. They're different ways of doing it. So everything starts from scratch. I mean, the best way, the fastest way to do it is to scan it. So I don't know whether I probably didn't have it 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure I didn't, but forgive me if I told this story 2 years ago, but I didn't. I know I didn't, because I did this in my new space and I only got my new space a year ago. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I was taking my garbage out, and this was within the last year. And I had one of those big hefty garbage bags in my hand. I'd say it was a pretty big one. I'd say it was about, it was full. Mm-hmm. So maybe 2 feet by 2 feet by 3 feet, something like that. And so I'm walking it down the hall to the garbage, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have garbage bags. That would make an amazing scan. So I literally plunked my garbage bag down in the middle of my floor, and I pulled out my iPhone and I scanned it. And it was that easy. Now, obviously, I had to bring it back into the software and clean it up and
to clarify
it and do all that stuff.
To clarify, you have the iPhone Pro with the LiDAR, right?
No. This one at the time was, I think, the iPhone 10. So there are apps that you can buy that will work just on the iPhone. There are different ways to scan. So LiDAR is probably the best, but I think that's iPhone.
I don't think 10. The 10 didn't have it.
No, maybe 12 or 13. So LiDAR is an option.
Okay.
There is something called photogrammetry. So photogrammetry there are all sorts of iPhone apps that will do it. Now, that obviously works for something like a garbage bag that you physically have in your hand. So I was able to turn my Miniprints trash literally into
that's the best.
A prototypical Miniprints garbage bag. So it was real and it was fast, which is the other thing that's kind of nice. So that's one option.
Okay.
The other option is there public domain? So sometimes, museums, like I won't print something off Thingiverse. Like I won't steal a design because, that's not ethical. And, sometimes I will find something perfect online and I will ask the artist, if I have, if they are open to me offering it, and of course I will compensate them,
Right.
So, I mean, I also don't think there's no need to recreate the wheel. If something exists out there that I think is, Miniprints worthy, that someone's done, there's the possibility that I've got a pretty big pipeline right now. There's a lot of traffic to the website.
Right.
So, on occasion, I've said to someone who has a really fantastic design, I could go recreate it, but why? You've already done it and it's fantastic. So, how about I sell it and, you get a % of everything that sells. Mm-hmm. So that's an option. And then there's the other option, which is to start from scratch.
Right.
And there's a number of software programs out there, some of which I'm really good at and some of which I'm not. And at this point in the business, I actually have people that are designing for me.
Gotcha.
So in the case of your Fisher, I would go to one of my 3D designers and say, let's go make a Fisher.
Right.
Cool.
And I would art direct it, and like I just don't have time at this point. There's just such a volume.
I mean,
I'm not designing everything anymore.
In any business too, you have to decide, where's your time most valuable, and if you can outsource the designing part and you can spend the time 3D printing, that makes sense. And that's totally not like it's a sacrifice in quality. It's just, where are you spending your time?
No. Exactly. And I love designing, don't get me wrong. But there's some things that I'm really good at, and there's some things that other people are better at.
Hey,
So
I feel your pain. Same thing.
Yeah, in the case of the Fisher, I know the person I would call tomorrow if you wanted some Fishers. So that's probably
I think
the route I would go on.
I think that's good, and I think that's very similar to how some of the kit manufacturers will use guys for instructions or use guys for their prototype build outs and things like that. It's no different. It's just a different application.
Yeah. Where I'm really sort of focusing my time right now is the 3D scanning of people. Because part of it too is I do what sort of I want or what excites me.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Fisher's cool and everything, but I don't think I want to spend...
No. I just pulled an animal out of thin air.
Drawing a Fisher. Yeah. But it's a cool idea. I like it. There was an animal very recently, kind of like a Fisher, that someone asked for. And it's a javelina, otherwise known as a peccary. Have you heard of them?
Yep.
They're kind of like wild pigs. So there's a bunch of guys that do a lot of Arizona modeling. So I had done a lot of sort of Southwest desert animals, jackrabbits, road runners, armadillos, things like that. And then someone said, well, I need some javelinas. And I'm like, what's a javelina? And they said, a peccary. And I said,
what's that?
What's a peccary?
You're not helping me here.
A wild pig. A wild pig. So that's kind of an example of an animal that, like your Fisher.
Yeah.
That, wasn't in the catalog, but, somebody wanted.
Yeah. Now I was honestly,
but there are lots of programs.
I was going to say originally, a more common North American animal, but I knew the Fisher might either throw you for a loop or it might get you interested. So that's why I picked that.
It got me interested. It did both, actually. Yeah.
So
double duty. Well, and the funny thing is I'm running out of North American animals. So, so good on you. You found one. You found a new one.
I'm glad I could do my part.
Yeah.
But I do find that interesting how you're either sourcing those 3D files or you're working on your own or you can scan it or whatever that is. It's interesting because, that people I don't think people always understand the complexity behind things that go into before the stage before you can even print them. Like there's a lot that goes into that.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're drawing from scratch, you're using a program like Blender or a program like Fusion. It depends what you're drawing, right? Because drawing sort of an organic shape is very different than drawing like a battery box or
right.
Something like something with lots of square edges and components. Something mechanical.
Right.
You could do in something like Tinkercad or Blender or Fusion. The organic shapes you're going to use, different programs. So there's no really one size fits all way of drawing something.
Right.
Well, now that you got all the technical stuff out that I was entirely lost with,
we lost him.
I am technically challenged when it comes to stuff like that, but I do find it fascinating to listen. And I learned so much listening to Brett with what he does with his job, and then of course when we have a guest like yourself on it has that technical knowledge of what they do like that, I find that fascinating as well. I just love looking at all your product and just some of the cool stuff. Like right now while you were talking, I was perusing the website, and I love creepy stuff, as Brett can attest to.
Yeah.
And I have like creepy doll heads and all kinds of other I put some up on our Facebook group so people can check it out. But some purchases I made right before Christmas now don my workbench. But the scary clowns are something I need to look into and get under the people. Scary clowns.
Oh boy,
is something. Did you see them, Brett?
Yeah.
They're pretty cool.
Well, and if you want to see all the creepy stuff, go to miniprints.com and then / and then type Halloween.
Oh yeah.
And if you go to miniprintscom/Halloween, then I've collected sort of everything under one page of all the different stuff.
Oh, so it's like an Easter egg here?
Yeah, kind of like I kind of put it all in one easy place, obviously around Halloween time.
I'm going there now here.
Showing everyone there. So you've got all your creepy stuff. And one thing that was really fun is this year I started to play with something I'd never done before, which is glow-in-the-dark resin. So 3D printer resin that actually glows in the dark.
I see that. You have your glow-in-the-dark ghost.
Yeah, and I also did the Undead Rider glow-in-the-dark. So this thing is unbelievable. I mean, you can see it balancing on my finger. It's tiny.
Yeah.
It's a skeleton on a skeleton horse. And I printed it out in glow-in-the-dark resin, and it just, like, when you shine a light on it and then turn the lights out, it's crazy.
Now, I will say one thing. There are a few things in here, while it is packed full of awesome, creepy things like my dad's interested in now, all of a sudden, there are some other things like vultures, owls, ravens, even jack-o'-lanterns or headstones that you could use in a modern setting. Not a modern setting, but like a normal city scene. But then if you want to throw in some creepy stuff, hey, that's fun too.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I've really gotten into that was new since the last time we spoke is I'm totally into trying to figure out how to put LEDs in everything. So I've got a whole line of things I call mini lights. Yeah. So there's a whole line. There's probably a page too if you go to miniprints.com/minilights, MINILIGHTS. So pretty much everything at Miniprints has the word mini in front of it.
Okay.
So mini lights was a whole little sort of product line I did where I was trying to figure out how to put like flickering LEDs into things. So I did televisions, I did fires like a dumpster fire, a fire burn barrel, jack-o'-lanterns. I even lit like a railroad lantern, a pot-belly stove. So I'm not really into, I haven't sort of wrapped my head around the whole animation with Arduino. I mean, I played with it a little bit, but I love sort of figuring out how to animate things with light. And I think my favorite in all of those is the campfire because I've got a video up on there and it's just so effective.
Now,
like it looks completely realistic.
Does and I might know this by clicking into it if I had read this, but just for our listeners, if I were to buy a campfire or the burn barrel, everything comes supplied, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
now the campfire I didn't include the wood because I figure everyone's got twigs, right? And I'm not into modeling. Like one of my rules is don't model things in 3D print that look better
in real life,
in the real world. So like I could 3D print some wooden logs, but like why don't you just go out to the garden and snip some pieces of wood? Yeah. It's going to look better. Right.
So this is cool. You can order it. You can order this and it comes unpainted, but when you hook it up, boom, now you have a fully functional, like the fire burn barrel. I like the guy, he's warming his hands. He's kind of working on like a dockside or a seaport shipping area. He's warming his hands by the burn barrel. That's awesome. And it comes.
So how good do you have to be with electronics to get the thing to wire?
No, nothing. It's all done. It's all done. So basically, and for the fire burn barrel, for example, the fire barrel's already painted. So the figure that comes with it isn't. But the actual barrel's painted, the LED's installed. Like basically, you just hook the LED up to anything from 7 to 19 volts, AC or DC. So you could hook it up to a 9-volt battery, or you could hook it up to your auxiliary bus
power
line.
pack. Yeah.
Yeah, or even track power. Even I mean, it's it goes up to 19 volts AC or DC. So
Bernard, I'll answer that to help my dad a little bit. Everything we have,
I'm not an electrician.
Everything we have, Dad, I can hook it up to that.
Cool.
If like what Bernard was saying, if you're already running some power, whether it's from the Woodland Scenics power packs or any of the other lighting the lighting people that are out there, or even like if I understood you correctly, you can get on Amazon and we can buy the little 9-volt battery adapters and run a few of these off of that probably.
Yeah, and I mean, it really depends how you want it to be hooked up. Like on my layout, what I did with one of them is I actually hooked it up to, I was playing around with Arduinos at one point, and I had bought a, I think it was called a PIR sensor, so it was a proximity sensor. So when someone walked within a foot of the sensor mounted on the fascia, it actually then triggered the animation.
Oh.
So you can have these things on your layout, and if they're hooked up and they have a proximity sensor on them, they won't actually start flashing until someone either walks to it or presses a button or does something.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
See, I asked that question. Okay, go ahead.
No, I just think a lot of people do sound that way. You'll walk in front of a scene, and there'll be something that'll trigger, the sounds of crickets chirping or like
that's great. Well, I asked the question about how easy they are to hook up, because when people, I know that there might be a lot of listeners out there like me that when they're intimidated by the thought of having to do a whole lot about some of the more difficult parts of wiring and things. And I know there's some wiring or some lighting products that are out there that do require more more intricate knowledge of the circuits and whatnot. And so I just want to know if it's something that, well, obviously it's not something that they should be intimidated by. So that's cool.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, if you can wire a layout, if you can figure out how to get track power to a track, you should be able to deal with this. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just for the record, that's the part I'm worst at electrical. Like, that's the part I hate the most.
Yeah,
I'm
me
great
too.
with bench work. I'm great with scenery. I can't stand electrical. It's the one part of model railroading. Like, I am absolutely living for dead rail.
Right.
The minute we can get the power into the locomotive and off the rails is a happy day for me.
Oh boy.
Well, either way,
that would be really nice.
It's cool that you're figuring out ways to now animate your 3D prints for everybody too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's all part of innovation, right? Because the world's changed in the last 2 years. So, number one, I think as we talked about a couple of years ago, I get bored easily and I get distracted, by squirrels, like your beagle, Yep. Every time something shiny goes by, it's like squirrel.
Oh, yeah.
So, but part of it is, I wouldn't have a company if I just sort of, designed a bunch of birds and stood still for 2 years, because, it's the world's getting more competitive and, there are other options out there. So I'm always trying to come up with new ideas, something that people might not have seen before, or things that, are a little bit different, or things that I just want for my own layout or that are fun for me to make.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, one of the things I'm going to order. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I said, or requests, I mean, somebody saw the dumpster fire. I did the dumpster fire because, let's face it, 21, 22, the last couple of years have kind of been a dumpster fire.
Yeah, they have.
So I did the dumpster fire because, I thought it was funny. And then someone said, well, can you just take that 3D printed flame and just make a campfire? And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I am going to order some fish.
I knew the fish interested him when he brought it up.
The freshwater fish and the fish that are the trout, salmon, and pike. I'm not sure which I'm going to order. I might order both. But out of my waterfall that I recently did, I have an eagle who is now getting. I got that idea from a photo off your website. But I got this eagle extracting a fish from the water in flight, and I am going to take one of the other three eagles, the one that is more like standing, not with his legs spread, his wings spread, his legs are spread. Yes.
Jeez, Dad, we're going dark quick.
But his wings are spread, not that one, the other one is, and I'm gonna have him sitting on a nearby rock in the same waterfall, with some fish on the rock, and that he is in the process of destroying and eating. So I'm going to do that.
That's fine. I will sell you some fish on one condition.
What's that?
Well, we have to have a little conversation about how you affix things before spray painting.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. The eagle was a mess. Okay.
You know what? I love that story.
Yeah.
I love that story, and I'll tell you why. Because I am now going to go to market with the following advertising campaign. That our birds are so prototypical that they even fly.
They just need a little gust of wind or spray paint under their wings.
That's right.
I couldn't believe that. Oh.
So realistic, they're aerodynamically accurate. That's what happened. You basically you created lift with your spray paint, and he basically flew away.
He did, and he apparently went to a safe spot, because when he fell, and I spent all that time looking for him, and I went and put him back, and he was sitting on top of the trash can lid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and he wasn't broken. He wasn't broken. That was like the best part, and I was frustrated and mad, and if anybody had not seen listened to last week's episode where we talked about the eagle, I'm not going through the whole story again per se, as just explain. Go to that, listen to it, you'll understand where I'm going today. Is my frustration level was, when I find it, I feel like I want to smash it, but it wasn't the fault of the thing. It was just I'm frustrated trying to look for it. I'm also freezing outside. It's cold. I'm in a t-shirt and a pair of slippers, and and sweatpants, and that's it. The longer you're out there in the cold, the worse it gets. The madder I'm getting. My flashlight batteries went out. I had to replace them. I'm going to come back outside again, and then when I found it, my whole attitude changed. I felt better than when they came in the mail, and I was excited. I was more excited. I was more excited when I found this eagle than I was when any of the things I bought to start putting this part of our diorama together. I was that excited because I found this little itty bitty eagle. And
well, I'm glad you found it. and if it makes you feel any better, I'll tell you two things. One, I would have happily replaced it if you didn't find it, because it is a hobby and it's supposed to be fun. So the standard Miniprints guarantee is that if you break it, if it arrives broken, obviously I replace it for free.
Sure.
I pay the postage.
Right.
But if you drop it, I mean, I had a gentleman the other day, probably a couple of weeks ago, contact me and said, listen, it's totally my fault. I dropped a bottle of paint on one of the Miniprints. I smashed it. I said, no problem. If you break it, lose it, drop it, smash it, whatever, I will happily replace it for free. The only thing I ask is that you just cover the postage.
If you spray it a mile across your yard with a can of spray paint,
then I will happily replace it. The other thing I will tell you, if it makes you feel any better, is I've done the exact same thing with birds. As a matter of fact, it turns out that 3D printed birds have about the same flight characteristics as real birds. Because this summer, I have an employee now. So one of the new things over the last 2 years is I moved out of the house. I got a commercial space. I have a full-time employee now. And we're in this really neat brick building. It's a whole nother story. I'll tell you about the building sometime if you're interested.
Yeah.
But the short story is we're in this new beautiful railroad served brick building in an industrial part of Toronto, but it was a really hot summer, like a super hot summer. Like we're talking like 100+ degree Fahrenheit days in this old brick building. So, and we're on the second floor and it's like an oven in there. So I've got these fans going everywhere. Well, my employee, Brett, is snipping all
his name's Brett?
seagulls. And Brett, yeah. B-R-E-T-T.
Well, hey.
Yeah.
As one Brett to another Brett, I approve of that hire.
There you go. Well, Brett's a great guy. As a matter of fact, the fire burn barrel that you were looking at, that's a 3D scan of Brett.
Okay.
So the gentleman in front of the barrel holding his hands out, Brett modeled that for
Perfect.
me. So that's Brett meet Brett.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you
awesome.
go. So you've just met him. Yeah, you can get a mini Brett for your layout. So Brett is snipping seagulls, and he walks by one of my rotating fans, and probably like 100 seagulls that he just finished snipping, and these things are tiny, get lifted up by the fans because it's 1,000 degrees in there, and they all go flying everywhere. Yeah. So I've been there. It turns out that our animals are very prototypically aerodynamic, and I feel your pain.
Well, I have another funny story I've told no one. I've not even told Brett this.
Oh, wow. I can't wait.
Okay.
Yes, and this is involving a mini print. So I had, I did paint the deer. I put them up on the Facebook with the, I had one deer that I had a couple deer that I bought. I don't know who made the things. They're one of the Bachmans or something like that. They had deer. The one deer I painted has the deer's head down drinking out of the water off the stream. And I needed to do that. That was important to me because it was a stream and I wanted to add some wildlife to it. But the reason I did that was because I wanted to have, if you ever notice with deer, when one is drinking or eating, the buck usually is, I chose a buck, but the other deer are looking out for them and then when they lift their head up when they're done, they look out for the other one while they eat. Right. So I wanted to have the buck that you had sent me before. I had a buck and I had never painted it. He's been in a box and I was all excited to use my mini print buck. And I had him already. He was going to go with that other one, the doe that was drinking the water. And I had it all, exactly what I did is what I had planned in my head. So I had him. I primered him. I was all excited. I primered up the buck. And you have to be gentle with these things, especially with them because of their antlers. And well, not just their antlers, as you'll hear. So I use a cork. Okay, and I put the two-sided transfer tape on there, the 3M transfer tape. I stick it on top of the cork and peel it off, and it's perfect. And I can just stick my object, what I'm painting, or the small, onto that cork, and I use it to hold it in my hand and turn it and manipulate it while I paint. Well, I went to stick that deer, the mini print deer, the buck, on. I was putting him onto the cork, and then trying to make sure he stuck on. And I pressed down too hard, and all four of his legs snapped off at the kneecaps. You didn't know that, Brett, did you?
No.
All four legs snapped off, and I'm like, oh no, it's ruined.
So here's the good news.
Yeah.
The good news is you've already said you're gonna order some more things. Make a note in the order that you need a replacement buck, and I will include it. No charge in your next order. So you'll have it. Now you can choose to put it somewhere else. What's that?
No, I already bought one from you. And you sent it to me just a couple weeks ago. And
you could. Okay, well then I'll send you another one. So you have
that's fine. Yeah, okay, that'll be good. And
but
it wasn't about that. One. I didn't want to bug you about that. We just like having you on, your friend, and so it wasn't a big deal. But it was funny because I wanted to get it done, right? And I wanted to do this part of it and get it done and paint it. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have it. I don't want to bug Bernard for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go dig in that box with the Bachman stuff, and I'm going to get the other deer. They had another deer. I thought it was a deer anyways. But I work with some guys that were avid hunters. And so I leave my office, go back to the warehouse. I'm talking to these guys, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this thing? And they're like, that's not a deer, that's an elk. Okay, because they're just like a puffy chest thing with this, like a giant beard coming down off his chest. And they said, that's an elk. You could tell by the shape of his horns. And I'm like, oh, man. So I said, well, okay, then I'll just order. I was going to just paint him and get it done. And then, well, what if I trim his horns in a certain way to make it look like a deer? And they're like, no, man, unless you like sand down the front of his chest. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, These are deer hunter guys, right? So that's when I ordered I was like, and I'm so glad I did. He turned out awesome. They look great.
Oh, the paint job is fantastic.
Oh,
now I've
you.
got a tip for you. I've got I like Bernard's top tips. So
sure.
The tip of the day, because I've used the double-sided sticky tape as well, and you're right that sometimes it's a little hard to get things up and off. So I've moved. I use the same thing you do. Instead of a cork, I use like a wooden dowel, like a just trim, like a broom handle type thickness.
Yeah.
So about the same thickness as a cork, and I paint the same way you do. But I've started to use, do you know what blue tack is, or fun tack, the little sort of blue putty that you use to stick into the wall?
Yeah, I have some of that, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so I usually just create a tiny little ball of that and then press it flat with my thumb. And that's what I use to stick my mini prints to my corks or my dowels.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
I have a whole box of
poster
that stuff.
putty.
Yeah.
So that poster putty, the nice thing about it is it's super sticky, but you can actually embed things in it. So if you were to take your deer, for example, and press all four legs into that blue tack, poster putty, fun tack, whatever you want to call it,
right?
You're literally sort of pressing it into something that's got a bit of give to it, so you won't snap it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great because he snapped right at the knees, and he looked like a midget deer. And I took him.
Well,
and because I was
modeled, you've just modeled roadkill.
Yeah.
Well, and I was gonna say the other thing.
I was so disappointed.
The other thing
with myself.
The other thing you could have done, Dad, is just had him standing in the water like he was, up to his first knee.
I did that.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I took him and I laid him. I put him in the water in like a deeper section. I was like, no, man, he wouldn't look like that. He wouldn't look like that. It just didn't look normal. And it bothered me, 'cause I was like, man, it's just. I was like, maybe I can still use him. And then I went to put him in the water, and then his horns broke or his antlers broke. I was like, oh man, this thing is like he's a hospital case now, right? So that night I got online. I just ordered the other one and a new one. But it's cool because now I had the whole set of deer.
Yeah. Try some of the fun tack or blue tack or the poster putty, whatever they call it.
Yeah,
I've got LePage brand, but I'm sure it comes in all sorts of different brands. But it's a reusable adhesive. Kids use it to stick the posters up on the walls. That's been very effective for me for when I'm holding people or things onto a painting surface.
I'm definitely going to do that. I have it sitting right here, right in front of me right now, actually. So that's cool.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. That'll work out good. And then I also painted the Santa Clauses at Christmas time. The two Santa Claus. I was going to put them on the layout, on the big layout down at Brett's house for our granddaughters, and have both the girls try and find them, like a Where's Waldo somewhere on our monster layout.
That'd be fun.
But it didn't do that because I hadn't been down there since, and because we got busy with the holidays and stuff. But I'm planning to get down there again here in the next week or two. So we will probably do that one with the girls and the Santa Clauses. Yeah. So, but they'll be great.
That to me is the fun part. I love painting these, and people always ask me, will you paint them for me? And I'm like, no, sorry, like I don't have time. It's
that's the fun of it,
but it is time consuming. So mini prints do get sold unpainted for the vast majority. There are a few things that I've started to sell painted. So like for example, like a tire pile, I'll give it a shot of black or the things that are lit, like the TVs and the barrels. You have to paint those because you can't really paint them once they're assembled. So I'd say that a few mini prints come painted, but the vast majority are unpainted. And when people say, well, why? And I'm like, because that's the fun part. And, like it's getting your hands dirty. This is not ready to run. It's
like there's plenty of figures that come pre-painted, and I think the point of buying these the way that you create them, half the fun of it is painting them. And it's like you buy a Craftsman kit. You don't buy a Craftsman kit assembled. You buy a Craftsman kit so you
can assemble it.
Yeah, in a way,
Like
in a way, Bernard.
In the building.
In a way, Bernard, these are craftsman detail parts. I mean, these are craftsman detail parts. You're not buying mass-produced. They're not coming off an assembly line where they're doing an injection molding of 10,000 people at a time. You're doing what a lot of our other guests are doing in the modeling community, but in a 3D printed world. So
that's exactly correct, Brett.
Yeah,
exactly. You nailed it, because it's not like each one of these are literally handcrafted. Like like Brett or I are sort of snipping them and cleaning them up, and I mean there's a lot of care and handwork that goes into each. It's a great analogy. I love it.
Yeah, $10 can buy you a dozen or more, or even on eBay you could probably find for $10 100 HO scale figures in a big bulk pack. But it's not they're not built or created or, like you said, hand snipped with the same level of detail that these parts would be. So you're really like, you are the fine scale 3D printer. You're doing it in a different manner than a lot of other detail parts would be done.
Right.
On the mass scale.
Exactly. And I had a guy called me and he said, I need your advice. I'm like, okay, what? He said, listen, I know, don't say anything, but I bought some stuff from China. I bought some 3D prints from China.
That. Go ahead. I want to hear
and
this.
He said, he said, I just need your advice. He said, there's some sort of liquid oozing from them. And I said, ooh. God. I said, the minute you use the word ooze, that's never a good thing. I said, what do you mean what do you mean? I said, what do you mean there's liquid oozing from them? He said, well, they're sticky. How should I clean them? And I said, so you're telling me you just bought 3D printed parts from China that are oozing a sticky liquid? And he said, yeah. And I said, I think you might want to just toss those. I said, I have no idea how toxic that stuff is. I don't know, I said, you could toss it in a vat of isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol and give it a swish. I said, but honestly, like that's, we're not going to send something out the door that's oozing. Like that's scary.
That's concerning. Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
I ordered definitely... this. Mm-hmm. I ordered the
What's
Chinese off of eBay a bunch of years ago when we first started getting back into this. I ordered a pack of, they were cheap, from China.
Oh yeah, you were proud of how cheap they were.
Yeah, they were.
You're like, Brett, I got 1,000 figures.
No, it wasn't 1,000. It wasn't 1,000.
Or 500, whatever. It was a lot.
No, it was 100.
100. All right.
100 figures, HO scale. It said blah blah blah, and I got them. And hey, they weren't oozing or anything. They were like the ones you get from same material, injected molded like prizers, whatever. Okay, but They were crap. I mean, they were awful. And they had there was no facial expressions on the people. The clothing had no detail to them other than shape. And on top of that, they weren't even HO scale. They were like 1/100 scale.
They were like halfway between N and HO.
They looked like midgets. Yeah, it was. I mean, I guess midgets isn't the correct word.
No, Dad, we don't say that.
Little people. Is it little people?
Yeah, this is the part of the show where we have to correct my dad on what to not say. But no, they
not scale appropriate.
Yeah, they were like halfway between N and HO scale though. They were just a odd scale. Very strange.
I can't put them with it. It's like the dwarves. They're like the elves. It's like they're like elves. It was awful.
You bought Christmas elves.
Yeah, Christmas elves. Yeah, they were just terrible. I still have them. I have them. Sometimes when you get something that's just absolutely horrible, you have to hold on to them because it's more of a, hey, this is a reminder never to order these kind of things again.
It's a punishment. You're not allowed to throw them out because this is how bad of a decision that was.
Right. If I ever decide to make like an airplane disaster or something like that, maybe I'll use them and spread them around. I don't know. Perfect. But it's
the Donner Party. We can do the Donner Party.
Yeah, Donner Party.
But and that's why I love this whole new sort of world that I'm getting into of the 3D scan people, because the detail is unbelievable. I mean, I 3D scanned my neighbor in the unit I'm in now. So my neighbor is a potter, and I've come out with this new line of figures called "Don't Push Me Because I'm Close to the Edge."
Yes, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's kind of a bit of fun, with apologies to Grandmaster Flash.
Yeah.
I thought, I was just thinking, the whole thing started because I was having a conversation with someone about the whole flat Earth thing. Mm-hmm. And I won't go into that other than...
Oh, please, Bernard, we can have a whole other podcast about that if you want.
Okay, well, in my world, the Earth is round. However, I will definitely concede that while the Earth might not be flat, our layouts certainly are. So yes. I thought, how much fun would it be if I took the edge of the layout and started modeling it as the edge of the world? And it's kind of fun because when you think about it, like the layout edge, like you've got your scenery up to the edge, then you've got your fascia, but there's never any acknowledgement that there's this sort of void, right? So everybody that lives on our, very realistic 3D, layout world is really living on a flat Earth. And there is there is this sort of like end of the world to our layouts. So I started creating these little figures that I could put on the edge of the layout.
That's a
sort of like, a little guy peering over the edge, like, what's down there? Or, I scan my neighbor, Laura, and I have her like sitting on the edge of the layout, with her feet dangling over, right? So I'm having a lot of fun creating this whole little world of people that can sort of live on the edge.
That's a really deep thought though, Bernard, where the people who we put on our layout in our cities, they don't realize if you would think of it almost like the Beetlejuice layout from the movie,
Totally.
They don't realize we're creating a world for them. We're like this. We're like when you play The Sims and the Sims character doesn't realize there's a world outside.
Totally.
And to extend that world, like they're looking at something beyond your layout is actually really, I've never thought about that till you said that. Like that's a cool thought. Like what's out there?
Well, it's kind of fun. So I created 3 figures. My first one, close to the edge, number 1, is my friend Steve Duranix, and he's kind of peering over the edge, and it's called Terra Incognita, which is what they used to write on old maps. Like when it's like when there were monsters at the edge of the world, like, this is the land that's unknown. So that was my first one. And then I started just sort of thinking about what comes next. So then the second one, Close to the Edge 2, that's Brett again. So Brett modeled that one. And I have him there with like a spyglass kind of peering out into the great unknown. And I call that one Here There Be Monsters, because it's kind of like, the old sea captain.
That's my favorite one.
Kind of sees a monster out in the distance. And so I kind of think that's kind of fun, because he's kind of peering out into the great abyss. And then for the third one, for Close to the Edge 3, that's my neighbor Laura. And she's kind of living on the edge. So she's kind of like, she doesn't know what's out there, but she's chill about it, because she's just kind of like hanging out, with her feet swinging over the edge, kind of thinking about, there's I don't know what's like a 50-inch drop in HO scale. It's like, probably taller than the Grand Canyon.
I like these though, because you can use them to extend your scene past your physical layout boundary, but then you can also buy them
100%.
Like the Close to the Edge one where he's peering over the edge. My dad could use that on the waterfall or the spillway that he's creating. Like it's just a guy watching the water rush by.
Exactly. Like none of these have to be on your edge of your layout. They're just kind of fun poses. Like, and I'm getting such like the unbelievable realism that I'm getting on these figures. Like, did I post it? No, I didn't post it. It's too bad. I got to post it up for the Laura figure, the third one, Close to the Edge 3.
Right.
I did a little painting experiment where I love experimenting with different techniques. So I took the same figure and I primed them with my Krylon. I always prime with the same. I think we talked about it last time. The flat camo khaki Krylon. But then for one of them, I just started painting over top of the spray, so the base coat. And then for the other two, for one of them, I used an oil-based wash just to settle in all the crevices. And then for the third one, I just did a standard black, like a pin wash, before I started painting it. So I wanted to highlight all the detail on the base figure before I actually started to apply paint. So it's just a bit of an experiment, a painting experiment.
Yeah.
And I could not freaking believe, this is an HO scale. I could not believe the detail. You could see every facial detail, every fold in the clothing, like the fidelity that you're getting from like 1:1 scale down to 187. It blew my socks. It just blew my mind. I was blown away.
Oh yeah. It's super
just
cool.
Unbelievable.
My favorite one, though.
Never model that.
My favorite one, probably the most realistic scene, and I want to know why you made this one, Bernard, is the Bernard crashes his drone limited edition.
That happened. Geez, that's about a year ago. So I think that might have been that was probably March or April of this year. And I crashed my drone for the first time. And I've been flying drones for about 4 years now. And I do have my license. So I have 3 different drones. One is big enough that has to be licensed. 2 are small enough that you don't need a license. I think it's the same in the States, but it's sub 250 grams.
Yeah, it's very similar. Very similar.
Yeah. So after 2.5 years of flying as a licensed drone pilot, you can read about this, I finally met a tree. And it was just a rookie move. My new Miniprints World headquarters is right near a rail line. Actually, I'm in the middle of what's called the junction triangle. So I've got rail lines on all 3 sides of me. I'm in the middle of a triangle surrounded by trains. And I was doing a video, which you can actually see. I think I posted it on my YouTube channel. And I was flying backwards, and I kind of was not paying proper attention. And I hit the one tree. There's like every tree in the entire neighborhood is like, 40 feet. I hit the one tree that was like 120 feet. Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't paying attention. So I figured if I'm going to, and everyone knew about it. I posted about it. I showed the video, and it was a thing. So I figured, okay, shit, now I need to go buy a new drone. So I thought, what the hell? I'll sell limited editions. I think I did 20 of them, something like that. I forget of the painted ones. It was a limited edition. I forget how many I made available. I think there's still some available, but I said, I'm going to do a limited edition. I'm going to commemorate it, and I'm going to, you can buy it unpainted, in which case it's cheap, or you can buy it painted, in which case it's more expensive, and I'll use that money to buy a new drone. And people really liked it. I'm surprised. I didn't think it would sell, but I sold a bunch of them.
That's so cool.
So it helped me buy a new drone, and everyone laughed. I mean, everyone thought it was freaking hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. Now what?
Yeah, and I used a little bit of fishing wire, like rigid fishing wire, to literally suspend the drone over my head. So it's
I was just going to ask that. You just answered my question. That's so cool.
So think of it as like fishing line, but it's a thicker, more rigid. It's actually what it is fiber optic.
Oh, okay, wire. Yeah, that'd be nice.
I needed something that was clear, like fishing line, but rigid like wire, and the fiber optic.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cable, I don't know what you'd call it, just worked. Yeah.
That is so cool.
But that's exactly the kind of stuff I like doing, right? Because that's fun. Like, where are you going to find that anywhere else, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's so...
Well, not even that, but like Banjo Joe or ATV Rider. I've never seen any of these elsewhere. So, it's a lot of...
truly unique. It's unique.
Yeah. The Father's Day one. Well, Father's Day one's awesome, too. That's a cool one.
That was actually modeled off a photograph someone sent me.
Nice.
So that one, so someone sent me a photograph because every year I do like a Father's Day post and promotion.
Yeah.
And so a guy sent me, and it's all on my Facebook page. So actually I do have an ask. I will ask one thing of your listeners. If you want to see what I'm up to. Oh, the picture is actually right there. Actually, it's right there. So if you go to the Father's Day Limited Edition, if you click on the second photograph, James Adeney, Adeney 2022. So he sent me this picture, and this is him and his dad. And he said, can you make this scene for me? Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad I posted that. So this is the picture he sent me. I said, yeah, I can come up with something similar to it. I didn't actually, back when I did this, I didn't 3D scan it, so I modeled it. And you can see, it looks great in HO scale, but you can see that it looks modeled. It's not the same as a body scan. I mean, I could even perhaps go back and redo this as a body scan. I mean, it's fine. Like you can see it in HO scale. It looks great.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it. But it's definitely...
you have a lot of the polygons that are visible. I'm sure as it grows in scale, more of that's visible. But HO scale, and even I would guess maybe
you'd never see it.
Yeah, maybe even you could stretch it with S scale. I'm not sure, but
well, and the other thing too is you can see the polygons in the picture. It doesn't really print like that. It doesn't show when it prints.
Yeah.
Not that bad.
Which is why it's better probably for you to post the painted finished print versus a mock-up, because people are going to see the mock-up and go, whoa, that's with all these polygons on the face, and why is it going to look like that? And then when you print stuff, even when I print stuff on our limited capacity here with our 3D printer, that stuff never shows up.
Exactly. And it's true, and that's why I try and post everything painted, because I think that there's a lot of people that will post. Well, okay, so there are two things that really sort of bug me about the industry. There are a lot of people that post the 3D file, and it looks either really, really good or really, really bad. If you just look at it sort of like the picture of the actual sort of screen capture, it never looks like that when you print it out. So I always feel like you should show a picture of the actual printed piece. And I always like to show a picture of the actual printed thing that comes off the printer painted, because I think that's the most realistic way to show it, because, then you're really seeing what you get. The other thing, too, is I always print and paint things in HO scale. And a lot of times I've seen people, they'll print out like the O scale because it's easier to paint.
Yeah.
And they'll paint it, and then they'll photograph it. And then you think you're getting this like absolutely beautiful, paintable, detailed thing, and then it arrives in HO scale, and of course it's tiny. So I always try and be as honest and transparent. Most people, the reality is most people model in HO scale. So when I'm sort of printing something out and painting it, I always try and work in that scale.
Right.
I just think it's more honest.
Yeah.
I like to show it the way it's really going to arrive.
And that's so cool. And I don't think there's anybody that's going to be able to go to your website, pull it up, and go, I don't know, and not be wow. I know, because I went to one of the guys I work with, one of the same guys that's a hunter, and he does modeling kind of like Jason does. He does some modeling along the lines of the sci-fi stuff. Okay, the bigger scale sci-fi stuff, and he's really into that now, and he's actually pretty good at it. And well, anyways, we were talking at work, and I pulled up this site. This is when we were looking at the deer, and I was asking him the questions about the deer. He used to work at Bass Pro Shops and run their one of their departments in there for many years, and before he came to work for us. So I knew this guy knows his stuff. That's why I went to him. Anyhow, he pulled it up, and he was, he knows that it's HO scale. It's not what he works with, but he's like, that's absolutely insane. And it is instantly said that. And you're going to get that pretty much with everybody that's going to go to your site. I mean, even modelers, we've been modeling for a long time. We model, all of us, a lot of the people that you made figures of model it. And if we are those people that that you said came from other podcasts and stuff that do model road racing and Tom's Trains and things, every one of us in this hobby that have been doing it for a long time and are fairly decent at it, we go there and see it, and we're wowed. Everybody's still wowed. They love that stuff. So you're not going to get somebody that goes, that's not really all that good. You're not going to get that. That's what's so special about this for you.
I got to tell you, I'm 3 years in. It'll be 4 years in April 1st, believe it or not. And I'm having as much fun, if not more fun now than when I started.
And that's the best part of the business, right?
It is.
If you can still love this, it's got to be the best part is that you love doing it, Well,
and every now and then, it's like coming up with something new. Like if you go under vehicles, one of the things, there's a ton of new, like vehicles. I'd say vehicles, objects, and people are probably the three areas that have grown the most.
Yes.
Since we last talked. And a couple of the projects, like doing the mobile homes, was just so much fun. And my wife is really into horses. Matter of fact, she just bought a horse, believe it or not.
Oh boy!
So we now have. Yeah, I know. That's a whole nother podcast. I'm officially a horse husband. I'm learning what it's like to be a horse husband. Yeah, yeah. So I've started to get into a lot of equestrian stuff. So the horse trailer was really a lot of fun to do. And I think the thing that I'm probably the happiest with is the old pickup truck, because it's something that, I wanted, like this old sort of, truck up on blocks.
It even has the blocks.
Stick in yeah, for sure. The blocks are modeled right on there. Wow. I wanted something that I could sort of stick, in a field or on a front lawn or something. And this is one of those ones that either comes in a painted or an unpainted version. And some of them, as I say, most mini prints will come unpainted, but some I've started to play around with this painted option. And for this truck, and you can see it in one of the photographs if you go to the old pickup truck.
I'm there now
on the Miniprints.com website. You can buy it just as the resin and do whatever you want. But I've had a ton of fun applying some weathering techniques to it, and really making it look like super old and rusty.
And you know what's neat about that? And if someone pays, I'm sure it's a upcharge, right, for the painted one. Yeah, $10.
It is, yeah.
But you know what's cool about that, Bernard, is everyone that does that is going to get a completely unique one.
Totally.
Like you're never going to do it the same twice.
No way. Each one is like a little sort of mini work of art. Like not that I'm saying that I'm creating a work of art. I'm saying the way it comes out, it's unique. Like it's just like this little, like every time I do one, I'm like, ooh, that's a good one. Or, like it's just like you say, it's unique. It's custom. It's different. It's fun. And that's where I'm really getting like a lot of fun. You get a little sort of production line, and you start painting these things, and it's kind of fun. I have to remember to paint one for myself. I keep making them, and they keep going out the door. And I'm actually putting together 2 Fremo modules right now, because I leave for Springfield in a week. And the race is on right now, because I want to bring down 2 2-foot by 4-foot Fremo modules, and I want to just sort of display as many mini prints as I can on there. I'm not selling anything down at the show, but it's more like show and tell. Okay. I just wanted to sort of set up a little module, and this is one of the things I've got to get around to making for myself. I want to like get the static grass applicator out and just like stick it in the field, and then just like have tall grass growing all up around it.
Oh, that'd be a great idea.
You know, something in the front seat like growing out the window. Kind of like
that'd be awesome to do that too.
Over.
Yeah. We have an old truck like that on our layout, Brett. That Brett painted and put on an old pickup.
It's an old Lifelike. It came from the old Lifelike kit where you buy like the 8-car train set, and it has the easy track, and it's got a cattle chute and a whole bunch of things like that. But I had an old pickup truck that was like, I don't know, it was shiny plastic black, and I painted it and weathered it up. But it reminds me of that. It's very similar. And
he has stuff growing out of the windows and everything else.
Yeah, I put the tallest static grass I could find, and I started
12 millimeter.
Yeah, and I put a little thing of tacky glue inside underneath the cab, and I used the pliers, like a needle nose pliers, and I stuck them down individually so they were growing out of the windows and stuff. And it looks great. You should do it. It looks great when you're done.
Yeah.
I'm totally. That's exactly the look I want to go for. There's on that same page. There's a rotted rowboat, and it's got it's like an old rowboat that's completely decayed, and it's got a hole in the side of it. So I just planted that in the river scene of my diorama, my little Fremo module, and I got sort of like marsh grasses to grow up through the holes in the rotted out rowboat. So it really looks like it's been there for decades, and the vegetation's all grown around it.
Hey, but here's a question off little off topic, but on topic. Now you run a business, and you're also a model railroader. So do you find it hard to find time to do your model railroading as well for your own personal?
So I probably said this on the podcast 2 years ago. And I'll bet you I haven't gone back and replayed it, but I will bet you $1, Canadian or American dollar, your choice, right now, that I said to you 2 years ago, almost to the day. I'll bet you I said I haven't been down to the layout to turn it on in 8 months. And the reason that I'm pretty sure I said that 2 years ago is because right now I can tell you that in the last almost 3 years, 2 years since we spoke, 3 years plus since I started the business, the layout in my basement, and this is a full basement size layout. It's in a room that's basically 30 feet by 10 feet, and it's in 3 different rooms actually. But the biggest room is 30 feet by 10 feet. So it's a relatively large basement size layout.
Right.
In the last, call it 3 years, I've gone down and turned it on twice.
Oh. Goodness.
Yeah. It's horrible. So one of the things I've started to do, it's the worst. So I'll tell you all the good stuff, but it is the absolute worst part about running the business is that I have absolutely no time for model railroading. So what I'm slowly doing, and I kind of come to grips with this, is I think I'm going to dismantle the basement size layout, which is a shame because it took 7 years to build. But what I will probably do, since I have 2 teenage boys that would probably much rather have the basement than have a model railroad in the basement, I'll probably end up taking it apart on the theory that I really am never going to find time to go down there. And I'll probably end up building like a whole bunch more Fremo modules in my studio space on the theory that I'd much rather have, and I see this is an interesting trend I see in the hobby too. Way more people, in my opinion, are going for like 2 foot by 4 foot Fremo modules or shelf layouts or small things that they can really finish and super detail and really go deep and do like amazing scenery. Than sort of, I'd rather have something small that's finished that I can deal with than this huge big thing that's never going to get finished.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of that too. I'd love to try something like that myself.
Bernard,
I think I've come to grips with the fact
we joke.
It's just the basement was a nice idea, but it's just never going to get done.
Bernard, we joke quite a bit about how we don't have trains, and I'm sure you've heard all of our funnies about that, but.
We do have trains. But
we have a train, but in reality, I think that's the reason why we decided and elected to not have a very complicated track layout, we have a very simple figure 8.
Yeah.
I mean, not even a figure 8. It's an oval with a cut through in the middle. It's a one-way cut through, and that's it. Because we decided
scenery. It's about scenery.
We decided early on that my dad and I like to do the structures. We like to do detail parts and scenery. And though we wanted to do trains and we wanted to have a train because it's an important part of it, you know, it really wasn't something we wanted to be wrapped up into. So we elected to spend our time working like my dad does a great job with it, where he'll measure out a section, take a section home, and basically hybrid Freemo in a way, if that's a thing, at his house, a complete 2x4 or a 2x2 or a certain size section, and then bring it down in one chunk and just lay it right down into the layout. And it works perfectly for us because it's kind of a modular hybrid way of modeling for us.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I was watching a YouTube podcast, I guess, YouTube show the other night called Second Section, and they had two really talented modelers on, Tom Johnson and Thomas Klimowski. And Tom Klimowski wrote a book, like The Right Size Layout. It's a Combach publishing book, really good book. And Tom Johnson, I think, is probably... It's hard to say the most talented because I don't want to leave anyone out, but I'll certainly say one of the most talented, if not the most talented scenery guy I've ever seen. He is a retired art teacher. If you haven't checked out his stuff, it's unbelievable.
I've seen photographs of his work. It's insane.
It is insane. I mean, he was going through this thing last night, I think it was last night, about, you know, how he converted his... it's a shelf layout. I mean, it's no more than 16 inches deep at any point. I mean, meanwhile, he's done more in 16 inches than I could do in 3 feet. Like the way he's modeled, you know, the scenes of the 16-inch deep layout, it looks like it goes on forever.
That's incredible.
But he's gone so super detailed. He switched his whole scene from summer to fall, and he was going through and showing before and after pictures, you know, and he's like, and I put leaves on the roof in the corners of the gutters because, you know, that's how it would be in real life, and everything is perfect. Everything is
that's so weird. I just
accurate.
did some of that last night. Put leaves in the little corners on top of the rooftops where they would actually accumulate little dry brown leaves and stuff. Yep. That's the kind of stuff that I love. You know, that's the kind of the super detailing. Like, you know, it's all about the details. Right. You're right.
And that's. No, I'm saying, and that's the kind of stuff I like making.
Yeah. To me, I see stuff that's made on stuff that's a foot by 12 by 12 inches, and the guys will make them and they'll sit them on a shelf instead in their workshop, and like a display.
Funny you mention that. I want to put a plug in then because you've segued into it beautifully. So I've started to do a thing, and you hinted on this a little earlier. I don't know if you've seen it or if you follow the Miniprints Facebook page, but yet again, please follow me on Facebook because I've been posting lately. I've been doing a series of peanut butter lid challenges. Have you seen any of these?
I have, yes. They're awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So I've given everybody the next one, and if anyone's interested, if anyone in listener land is interested, the next deadline is February 14th, so that's Valentine's Day. So basically, there are no rules. So you do whatever you want. It can be any scale. You can use Miniprints. You don't have to use Miniprints if you don't want to. It's not, it's not a paid political message. You know, the whole idea is to get people modeling. Obviously, if you use Miniprints, I'd be thrilled. But you know how you mentioned earlier that you had all these Miniprints sitting in a box unpainted?
I have a few of them there. Yep.
Yeah, well, you mentioned too that the eagle had been sitting around or whatever. Yeah. I love the fact that people are getting Miniprints, but I hate the thought that, people aren't sort of using them or painting them. I think like Toy Story, like little toys that are, not getting played with. So I started this thing, and this February 14th will be the third one. I did one at Halloween, one at Christmas, and now I'm doing one at Valentine's Day. Grab a standard 3.5-inch peanut butter lid. I don't care whether it's craft. I don't care if it's chunky or smooth or Jif, or whether it's a red lid or a yellow lid, or just you can even use a Hellman's mayonnaise lid. I don't care. Just grab a lid that's roughly, I think a peanut butter lid's about 3.5 inches in diameter. Grab a lid, and that's the only constraint. So whatever you do has to fit within that, we'll call it a 3.5-inch peanut butter lid.
Right.
And that's the challenge. And then let your imagination go wild.
That's cool. We've done some contests like that ourselves when we had we were doing the website, and
we did them mostly through COVID. Like the 2020 spring and summer when everyone was kind of cooped up, we ran a couple of challenges where there was like an index card size or a 2x2 inch.
And we had some amazing ones that were done by like Dave Cruzwick. I think you know Dave. And who else? We had Matthew Hankins. He's done some amazingly gorgeous work as well. Yeah. Just some incredible work that we've had entered into this contest. It's so fun to see how the people work in a creative space to detail it out, and it's so much easier. Like you said, it's something you can complete. It's not something that's sitting there going, oh, am I ever going to finish this in my lifetime? Yeah, you're going to finish in 2 months, right? Or
exactly,
less.
Or in this case, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right.
And the beauty too is it's also a chance for you to try something you've never tried before. Like, maybe you don't want to go pour water on your layout because you don't want to wreck, you don't want it to flow down multiple levels, and you don't want to freak out. But if you've got a peanut butter lid 3.5 inches in diameter, you can make as many mistakes as you want. There's very low risk.
Right.
And to make it interesting, the winner, and I'll talk about the winner in a minute, the winner gets a $50 Miniprints gift card, and it's not judged. So it's not the best one wins. Nobody votes for it. It's just a random draw. So anybody who enters, and I don't care whether you put 1 hour into it or 1,000 hours into it, if you enter the contest, you are randomly entered into the draw for the $50 Miniprints gift card. So everybody has an equal chance. Mm-hmm. And it's just a way to encourage people to get out of their comfort zone and create something fun.
Yeah. And with Miniprints, it gives you the options. Here, it's a lot easier to fit. Like I did this diorama, okay, and it's 29 by 24 inches, okay, and then about a foot high, maybe not quite a foot high, and it looks humongous. It's got monster buildings on it. It's based off of that Foscale Models limited edition kit that he put out, and it's kind of under Doug's design. We talked about it last week. It's easy for me to add wildlife to it. Okay, because your eyes can focus on that small section to that small item or that small animal. People can now look at it and go, oh, there's deer there. Okay, but it's tougher to find that deer on a monster layout. Okay, not saying that you can't fit a whole lot of wildlife on a monster layout, and many people do, and they do it very well. Okay, but you're also worried about vehicles, cars, people. I mean, all the other features of a city or a farm or a mill area. Okay, where you lose the thought process of, hey, I need to add some wildlife in here. Okay, or you do, but it's a last minute thing. So then what happens? You order it and it sits on a shelf. Okay, well here with a smaller way of building and adding your modules or smaller dioramas into it, you can detail it out with those animals, and then when you put it all together on your layout, boom, there's your wildlife. There's your and the people and the wildlife are what, and I said it last week, are what brings to life your layout. Otherwise, it's a ghost town.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just posting. I'm doing it right now because the last time I did it was a couple of weeks ago. I'm posting right on the facebook.com/miniprints, and it's Miniprints 3D. So if you're looking for it on Facebook, it's Miniprints 3, like number 3D as in 3D.
Okay.
The Valentine's Day lid contest post.
Okay.
And it's just submit photos to me by Tuesday, February 14th to my email, Bernard@Miniprints.com. And everyone who enters has the random chance to win the $50 gift card.
There you have it, everybody.
And it's just fun. Like it's pure. We had 14 entries for the October, and we had 14 entries for the Christmas one. And I go live on YouTube the first Wednesday of every month. So I'm not by any means interested in becoming a YouTuber or having a podcast, but once a month for 1 hour, so 7 p.m. Eastern, on the first Wednesday of every month, I go live just to sort of check in and say, what's new in the world of mini prints. So when I have a contest like this, on March 1st, I think is the first Wednesday, I'll go live with all the entries.
Nice.
Oh, that'll be cool. That'll be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so Wednesday, March 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern, I will show all the entries that we get for the Valentine's Day. So if you guys want to participate, or if any of
we'll have to look into doing that.
Listeners want to participate, it's just a lot of fun.
Hey, it's Pennsylvania in the winter. There ain't much.
There's nothing to do.
Here. Yeah. So
and I mean,
we'll just be sitting here in our houses.
Well, and I mean, it's 3.5 inch diameter. It's not a huge investment. Well, although you wouldn't believe some of the entries have been so elaborate. If you're interested in seeing them, you can go onto the YouTube page and go back and look at previous month entries. It's some people have just put their heart and soul into these things. It's inspiring.
Cool. Well, now I got a question. We were going to get to it. We kind of went everywhere else on the map. And we were talking about the 3D printing of the people. Okay.
Yeah.
So walk us through the process of if I was going to Springfield next week and you were there, and you're going to be scanning people in Springfield next week, right?
I am.
Okay. Which is cool. So if you're at Springfield, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I said, if you're at Springfield, my listeners, and you go in and check it out, and I guess people can watch you scanning people, check that out, because I imagine it's kind of cool to go see. So
it is so much fun. So the bad news is all the spots are sold out. So I put a form up in advance, and I had 38 spots between the Saturday and the Sunday, and they disappeared pretty quickly, which is lovely. And over the course of Saturday and Sunday, we are in the Better Living Center, Section 19, right across from the NMRA National booth, right by door number 8. So apparently, John, the show director, said that we're in a great spot because we're right between the Dunkin' Donuts and the washroom, and we're right between Exact Rail and Intermountain. So it's a great area. I'm very thankful. We've got a lovely large space.
Good.
And I will be doing 3D scanning. I bring a monitor so everyone can watch, and it's we did this at Timonium.
Yeah, explain how that happens for us.
How I got to Timonium, or how the process works?
No, what the person comes, they stand on like a disc, or what the hell is it?
Yeah, I spin them around.
Okay.
They stand on a rotating platter. I spin them around. I aim a 3D scanner at them, and I capture their soul.
There you go, huh? That's pretty funny that you mentioned that. We're Civil War reenactors in the years past, and a lot of our listeners know that. We used to do that, but part of the history of Civil War, the Civil War in the American Civil War, is
when you saw old tintypes.
Right, when you saw old tintypes, a lot of times the people are looking away from the camera. Okay, and the reason being, at the time, because it was new, it was around the time that photography was just now coming out in the 1860s, or actually in the 1850s and stuff. It was getting real popular. When the soldiers would get their picture taken, or even just townspeople or anybody else, they would get that tintype made. They would look off because they thought that it was the devil, and they were going to.
No, they thought that
it was going to capture their soul.
Yeah, they thought the camera was going to capture their soul.
Yeah, right. Well, they thought it was evil though. the process, how it's done. They thought there was something evilly magical about it. But yeah, right. So anyhow, that's why they stare off to space and they don't look directly at the camera. But anyhow. Well, we went off the path on that one.
That went somewhere.
Yeah. Are you still there?
Uh-oh. Did I lose Bernard?
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh.
Call back.
Am I here?
You're here. Back? You're there.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Hey, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Did you catch the whole story from my dad about the devil and the camera?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Devil and
good.
And
what the hell happened there?
What I was saying, I don't know. The devil.
Yeah.
Stole our soul.
Yeah. Stole our show, huh? The heck?
Yes, exactly.
So now they spin on this circular thing, right? You said you spin them.
Yeah.
You spin them electronically or electrically? Does it? They stand on it and it moves.
Yeah. They spin around in a circle, and I mean, I over the past year, I've experimented with. I go around the person versus the person rotates. So is it better to have the scanner stationary and the person rotating, or vice versa? Is it better to have the camera move horizontally or move vertically? I have spent hundreds of hours. I've tried 5 different types of scanners. I've tried, I'm always experimenting on, what the right equipment is, because you kind of want a combination. You want it to be fast. You want it to be easy. I mean, the person has to hold their position, right, while you scan them.
Right.
So you can't have someone holding their position for 10 minutes.
No.
But at the same time, you want it to be fast, but you want to get as much detail as possible. And the two are kind of at opposite ends. So, I could get the most detailed scan in the world, but I'd be spending an hour going over every square inch of your body. Well, no one's going to stand still for that.
No.
So I've sort of developed my own little sort of mad scientist proprietary, what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I tested it at Timonium. I did 33 scans in October at the Timonium show. And you're seeing some of them up there on the miniprints.com/minime that we looked at, including one gentleman who did come in Civil War attire.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of, I think it was DC. You might know him from the Civil War movement. It was, what's his? DC is his. He goes by DC.
Okay. I may or may not.
We probably saw him. There's tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, that do that.
Yeah. And actually, I modeled some Civil War cannon for him that you might like.
Oh, nice.
I did see that on there. Yeah.
Yeah, the Napoleons.
Yeah.
They're Napoleons. Yeah.
Right.
They're 12-pounder Napoleons.
Yes.
That he wanted.
They're wild cannons, man. They are loud cannons.
They will blow you out. They will blow out your eardrums.
We've stood
I can imagine
10, 15 feet away or less during battle reenactments with those things going off, and it's incredible. The noise.
I can imagine.
It's amazing we can hear it now.
Check out DC1 and DC2 on the Mini-Me page. So he came with his Civil War gear.
Oh, cool.
And so we did a little scan there. Once again, it's it looks better in real life than on a little screen image. But so we tested it there, perfected it, learned a few things.
Right.
So you come in, you tell me how many little prints you want, what scale you're in. I confirm your mailing address, and they come in, they get scanned. The scanning itself probably only takes about 5 minutes, but I've sort of done blocks of 20 minutes because I figure, people come in, I'll explain it. We'll try a few different poses. We'll do a scan. If they don't like it, we'll redo it.
Right.
And then basically the scan gets me about 80% there. So it's not instantaneous in as much as I'll get the scan. But then I'll go back to my studio and I'll sort of clean it up, fill in the details, add in things that, for example, hats don't typically scan. So I add the hats or the glasses in after the fact. I'll fix it a little bit. And then 2-3 weeks later, I'll mail you your figures.
Nice. Oh, that's so cool. Now how many, we're not going to get into pricing or anything like that, but how many, well, when you said about how many they want, how many do they normally order of themselves? Well, because I don't know how many I'd want of me.
Well, I just made up a number and I said, for the price, I'll give you 5.
Oh, okay.
And believe it or not, I've had 5 is way too many. I only need 1. I'm like, well, I'm not giving you 1. What if you drop it or break it,
what
or
if you
don't
hit it with a spray can at night in the yard? It goes out, blows out on the patio. Yeah, at night.
Exactly.
In the dark,
if you have 5 of them, then you don't have to spend 3 hours, in your skivvies in minus degree weather looking for them.
Right.
I had one guy. I had one guy from Timonium say, "Okay, I'll take the 5 that are included. Can you make me another 20?"
Oh my God.
I'm like, what the hell are you going to do with 25?
He really likes himself.
No, you know what he said?
No.
I kid you not. I've got the email. I can show it to you after proving. He said, everyone's getting a mini-me for Christmas this year.
Oh, see, that's cool. Now, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
He must have been, he was probably like in an operations group or something. He probably hangs out with 20 guys in his club or something.
Right.
So he gave them all like a little miniature HO scale him.
That's actually pretty smart.
Dad, next year, all you're getting from me is a mini-me.
There you go. And I'll also do mixed scales. So I have some people that said, well, like I had one, it was a father-son. Yeah. And he said, well, I want, it's funny because actually it was really sweet. So the father brought the son to the Timonium show because the son wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And then the son said, Dad, I'm not doing it unless you do it because I want you on my layout and I want you to put me on your layout. And I ended up doing a mix because one was H and one was N. So I mixed. I made like a bunch of N scale and HO scales of both of them for each other.
Nice. Yeah. That's so cool.
So that was kind of cute.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool.
So, I mean, it doesn't really, honestly, all the time is spent in the post-production. So, like the scan takes time, sure, but it's all the computer work afterwards. So it doesn't really matter to me whether I print it out in N scale or HO scale or S scale or O scale or whether you want 3 of them or 5 of them. It's like, it doesn't really matter. And I really am a believer that a happy customer is a happy customer.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can you imagine printing one out in the G scale?
I have. They look.
Oh, you printed a human on a G scale?
Oh, God, yes. So many of them. As a matter of fact, there was one woman, I think it was Casey. So Casey on the Mini-Me page, she modeled dollhouse miniatures. So she wasn't even a model railroader.
Right.
So she wanted herself in 1 to 12.
Okay. Yeah.
So the KCC character, the one of the woman holding the coffee cup, that was actually, she came and she said, I saw you were doing this. Can you do 1 to 12 scale for my model dollhouse?
Right.
So I guess it was an inch to the foot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I got it right here. I pulled it up.
Yeah. So her character was like, I guess, 5 inches?
Yeah.
Type thing, 5 and a bit. She's
nice.
5, 6, whatever. Yeah. So she wanted 1 inch to the foot. Now, obviously, there's an upcharge because that's a heck of a lot of resin and a heck of a lot of print time.
Oh yeah.
And that's that's not common. Yeah, I mean, but that you can scale it anyway, any way you want.
Yeah, we were just joking around on that, but the sky's the limit for you on this. I mean, where you can go, what you're doing is insane. But
it's so much fun, and it's a spectator sport. So besides the fact that it's a lot of fun to watch, if you're viewership, listenership, if you're fans, if you're freaks, as you call them, are heading over to Springfield, and they want to pop by the Mini Prints booth to say hi, please do, because I'd love to meet everyone. But I'm also going to have the 2 Fremo modules there with the mini prints on them, and I'm going to be giving out postcards with a 15% off.
Oh, nice.
Coupon.
Good.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Good. Hey, Brett.
Yeah, so they should stop by and say hi.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I encourage all of our listeners that are going to be up there to actually do that. That's one of the reasons why when I was talking to Bernard several weeks back, or even I guess back is in December, and about getting on the show, we kind of timed this so it would be around the time for Springfield, and you could actually go see this, because the scanning of the people was something we really wanted to talk to you about and everything, and we're so glad we got to tonight. And we were going to talk a little bit about the modeling end of painting them and getting them ready, which we have done before, and we talked. And I just realized that when you told me about spray painting them with the
camo,
the camo color.
Now,
actually, I've been spray painting a lot of stuff with the gray myself, the Quilon gray, just simply because. Not especially with animals. I don't like the I don't like the camo brown or the khaki, because if it's an underlaying, I don't know. The gray gives me a better tone for whatever reason, I thought. So
yeah, and it's all about experimenting. Like every now and then, like I said, I'll just take 3 of the same figure and just try 3 different primers or 3 different washes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a lot of,
and even with detail parts,
investment just to practice.
Sometimes with detail parts, I'll just do a flat black, not a primer, because the flat black will allow me to have that shadow and some crevices that I don't necessarily want paint to get into, or if I'm dry brushing, the black will work a lot better. So like Bernard said, you just want to experiment with that a lot.
Right.
Yeah, and it's different. Like if you're painting, like for example, an HO scale barbecue, like a kettle barbecue, like a Weber, right? Then like black might be perfect, because if you're going to then sort of put red over top of it, you want the red to look darker, and then you want the bottom to be shadowed. So, you know, I might approach. There's no one size fits all. If you're doing an eagle, it's very different than a person. That's very different than a barbecue.
Right. Yeah, I didn't do my eagle. I did him in gray. But any, you know, I loved how he turned out. But the one question I had for you on painting, especially now that you've got more and more human figures, and I've been painting some human figures as well, of the unpainted versions that I have of that we bought some time ago for Prizer. But just from your experience of painting them yourself, what do you use for flesh?
I have bought, you're going to love the answer to this. So I have bought a line of paints called the Army Painter. So
yes, I know who they are.
Yeah. So Army Painter war paints. And I chose them because I could get, I think, 50 different colors. It was like one of these, it was on Amazon. And I'd read some reviews about them, some good, some bad. And I just went on, and I knew that I wanted everything. Like I wanted to get 50 bottles that covered everything, because I didn't want to have to be sort of like thinking about what I wanted. Like I didn't know where to start. So I just ordered the starter set. And the starter set was like, 50 bottles, and it came with like 4 bottles of metallics. So, you got the bronze, the silver, the gold. It came with 4 bottles of washes. So there's a light wash, flesh wash, dark wash, strong wash. And then it came with, I guess, 36 actual colors. Right. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The color that it came with, and you're going to laugh because all of these colors have got the best names. And I might have touched on this last time, but there's like dragon's breath and ogre's snot and like necromancer cloak and all of the names are like it comes from wargamers, right? These are like, I guess, wargamer paints. So this is I don't know, goblin barf or whatever. Anyway.
He's not lying. I've been
like literally
to one of those war figure shops where they sell that stuff. We have one in Harrisburg here, and they have the strangest names for them. They're cool though. So
they're unbelievably funny names. Like the one that I use for jeans. Here, what is this called? Void Men's Blue or something. I don't even know what that is. Like these all come from the world of my teenage boys would probably know what these things are, because it's all Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Anyway, the color, to answer your question, I use a color called Barbarian Flesh.
Barbarian Flesh.
Barbarian Flesh. It is absolutely the best skin tone. So War Painter Barbarian Flesh is my go-to skin tone. It's perfect. And I paint, and I might have mentioned this last time, I don't remember, but I paint with something called a wet palette. I don't know if you're familiar with a wet palette.
Sure am. Yep.
Okay. Absolutely critical. 100% the most important thing that I've ever learned about painting. And when I apply these are all just acrylics, little nipple bottles of acrylic, much like Vallejo or anything like that.
Right.
And when I paint with them, I use the lightest washes of color. So I'm almost not applying paint to the model. I'm applying sort of painty water.
Right.
So I because there's such fine details.
You don't want to lose it.
In these, So if you glob on the acrylic paints, they just fill in all the details.
Yes.
Whereas if you literally sort of touch a brush with sort of a colored water on it, then you get, you might have to do it 2 or 3 times to build up enough color. But the whole key for me is don't paint with paint, paint with water. Right. With a little bit of paint in it.
Right. Yeah, I thinned out with water almost every one of my paints when I was painting those figures. And you have to, because otherwise I'm going to lose every part of my detail. If you're using straight craft paint out of the bottle, you just can't, don't do that. And
there's no such thing. There's no such thing in my book as too much water, too little paint. I mean, I'll thin the paint down to the point where it's like 1,000 drops of water to a drop of paint.
Right.
And I'll say, like it can be so thin that I'll think, there's no way I can get this thinner, and you can.
Yeah.
Like you just keep. It's amazing how little paint you want. Like the set of paints that I probably got 2 years ago, I don't think I've used more than a couple drops.
Yeah.
Out of the bottle.
Yeah, you don't use much on those. I have a couple Citadel paints here, which are very similar, and
very similar.
And they same deal. That stuff will last forever for what you're painting. It really does. I mean,
I would argue it's a lifetime's worth of paint. If you're using up a bottle of paint, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah,
you're probably using too much paint.
Right. You only need a couple of little drops.
Well, even like a drop of paint, and then you just water it down so much that it's not paint anymore. It's just water.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating. Like the one thing I will say about it is you get decent results, but it is time consuming.
Right.
You find that, and I paint underneath like a halogen light. So the halogen light is so hot. That's the advantage of using the very thin water paints is that it's almost like painting with watercolors actually. But the time that, if you're holding it up, 6 inches underneath this warm light bulb, it almost dries instantly.
Right. Oh, I imagine it would with a halogen.
Yeah. The heat from the light almost dries, your
I think I need to get some halogen. I think I need to get some halogen lights down here because
Oh, your basement's
My basement's cold.
chilly and damp. Yeah.
So, well, it's not too damp now. I got the dehumidifier,
damp, yeah.
but it's cold. So the halogen log, I would just sit like a lizard, Bernard. I would probably just be like a lizard and live in the basement then. Under the halogen lamps. But even for painting, it would expedite in the drying process.
Right.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I had a hairdryer going. I had a little ceramic heater going. And I used to, when I was weathering freight cars, I'd sort of take the hairdryer out and sort of, blow it over the freight car a couple of times because I'm pretty impatient.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the surest way to ruin something is to move too quickly.
Definitely.
Yes.
Which you want to do because, you don't want to spend 18 hours painting something or even 6 hours or even 3 hours. And you kind of like you're tired, you want to go to bed, you want to go down, have a beer. You don't want to sort of prolong it. But the haste really does make waste. Like if you rush it, you're going to ruin it.
You're doing it a second time.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, the halogen light, I just got like one of these IKEA lamps on an arm, and it's got a halogen bulb. And, if I put my hand, I don't know, 3-4 inches below the bulb, like it's hot. Like you have to move your hand after a while.
Yeah. Huh.
Like these halogen bulbs will dry your paint very quickly.
Yeah. And now, one of the questions I had recently from posting up the painting figures that I've done and things for the last week or so, I had a lot of people commenting, well, what do you do to one guy said he takes some kind of black wash and he washes it over the whole thing and I've tried that, Bernard, and I don't like the outcome of it. I've not had good luck doing that. I think me
neither.
I think sometimes it makes my paints run or fade, or it changes the overall look. I like them painted as I'm painting, the way I painted them. And then because they're not big, and this is my logic. I tried to explain to this guy. I tried to type it to him in our Facebook group. But when it's such a small object, okay, that's going to be in grander scale, there's a lot of things on this module in particular that are eye-catching. The waterfall, there's a lot of focal points. The actual mill that Doug designed, the big mill at the top. Okay, there's all these things that are on this, and I'm just using this as my example because that's what I'm working with. But so anybody's design or layout or whatever they're building, if they're adding people or animals or whatever to, they are such small detail parts that if I fade them out and make them look dirty, because this guy sent me a picture, it's on one of the posts on Facebook, and he sent me a picture and it had his pants and stuff that's what you want, and you want it to look like that. That's fine. His pants were dirty, and as a result, because of the wash he put on, it was on his skin, and it just made everything look a little like they were out playing in the dirt, And I'm knocking. That's what they want. That's what they want. But for me, I like the colors to be not necessarily vivid or overly vibrant, but I want them to be noticeable. So when I put it on my scene, that your eye is going to catch to that. Otherwise, you don't see those people. They won't pop like they need to. The people tell the story. The animals tell the story of what's happening on that creek with the deer, or down along the water at the bottom of the waterfall with the eagle. Okay, those need to be visible. If they don't, what's the sense of putting them on there? You want them to look nice, but you want them to be able to be seen, right?
So what I've done, and I agree with you, I've got sort of two thoughts / comments. I agree with you. I've not had any luck with washes over top of the acrylic paints. Right. Interestingly, with my most recent experiment, I actually had more luck if I put the wash on first and then painted over top of the wash. So if you put a black wash or a dark tone, like one of these oil washes,
Like a Nuln oil?
Underneath, well, they're these washes that come from the Army Painter.
Yeah,
line that I've got.
They make one called Nuln oil as well for that kind of thing. Yep.
So if I put the wash on the base figure and then paint my acrylics over top of that, it seems if your acrylics are thin enough, the washes create that shading detail underneath. So that will work.
Cool.
So try that. Experiment with that. So and I did one where I just put thinned black paint on my primed figure, and then painted over top of that, and that was spectacular. Because it just darkens the crevices so that when I put my acrylic washes over top of it, you can see the definition better. So that would work. I have dirtied up clothing in the past using pan pastels. So not a wash, but just like a powder.
Yes.
And that's kind of nice because if you get too much of it on, you just wipe it off.
Right,
like you just brush it off.
Yeah.
So like I did have a guy that was wearing jeans and my wife said they're too clean. He was like standing by the track. So he needed a little bit of dirtying up, but I would rather use like a chalk or a powder or a pan pastel than
I've had good luck with that as well.
Yeah. And then the final thing I will say is I hate shiny figures. So the one thing that I do find is that these acrylic paints do sometimes dry a little glossy, and I don't think figures should look glossy. So what I will often do, if I remember, and often I don't, but I try and remember to just shoot a little testers, dull coat on top of my figures.
Oh, that's true too.
Because I think like figures shouldn't be plastic shiny, and the acrylic paints sometimes look a little plastic shiny to me.
Yeah.
So if you just dull them down with a dull coat or a flat coat spray, like a rattle can spray, that just dulls the shiny acrylics down, and realistic.
Yeah.
Like if I'm wearing a white T-shirt, and I think I did that with let me just see, the Don't Push Me Because I'm Close to the Edge character, Steve Duranix, the guy, Edge 1. Let me take a look at him.
The one looking down?
I think I painted, the one looking down. I think he had I painted him a white shirt, and then the white shirt under the lights was looking a little glossy. And I'm like, well, I'm wearing a white T-shirt right now. White T-shirts aren't glossy. So I dull coated him, just knocked down that white shine acrylic, and it was so much better. Yeah. Just looked a little more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue I had, the other question we had, well, not the question, it was somebody commenting on the color of the children that were riding on the shoulder of the father. I think the boy and the little girl I tried to give them blonde hair, but good luck finding a color that's blonde. Okay, you can mix something up a little bit, and maybe I could have went a little lighter. I used kind of a yellow paint, but if you see kids with blonde hair when they're young, it's got a yellowish tint to their blonde hair. Yeah,
and I did a blonde girl for the lemonade stand. So I have a little girl pouring lemonade on a lemonade stand. And I did her in blonde hair. Blonde is hard because, that's a very difficult. I mean, that's why most of my figures are wearing ball caps. Because hair is really hard to do.
Less hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the lemonade stand. I'll pull it up. But
Yeah, so there's a little blonde girl with two sort of pigtails behind the lemonade stand.
Yeah. It's tough. And that's maybe something that these paint companies and manufacturers need to start thinking about is, okay, they got flesh tones out, like you were saying. Okay, maybe they need to start putting out some colors for hair. Different tones of hair.
Yeah, definitely.
But
blonde is tough. I'm just looking. The Kids of Summer, which is baseball.
Okay.
Which is probably under people.
Right.
I did a series of kids playing baseball. It's a set of 3: a catcher, a pitcher, and a batter.
Gotcha.
And I made the pitcher. I think I was aiming for 16-year-old girl.
Oh yeah.
And I made
see
her
that there.
with a blonde ponytail.
Yeah, that turned out
and
good.
I think, yeah, I just kind of used. I mean, you just play
you
around.
Mix them around.
That's the beauty. Well, the wet palette, right? The wet palette makes mixing paints really, really easy.
Right.
You know, you put a drop of yellow and then you put a drop of white, and then you look at it and then you realize you need a drop of tan, and you just mix your paints on the wet palette
hair's a little
until
on the
you
yellow
get something.
Side. Yeah.
Little on the yellow side, but she.
It's what you can do, man.
Clairol.
Well, but at the same time, though, visually, if you guys weren't talking about the hair looking yellow, whenever you're scanning through a photo or you see it in person or whatever, when your brain recognizes what you're seeing, you're like, all right, that's a blonde woman, or that's a blonde man's hair. Like, we're already conditioned to process that as a blonde. So it doesn't look abnormal when you initially glance at it. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it turned out great.
Well, the other thing
we'll
too
get
is,
the now.
I don't think there's any right or wrong. I mean, there's a prototype for anything.
There isn't.
So, like, who's to say there isn't someone walking around with that exact hair color right now?
Right.
You know, who knows? Like,
Hey,
I don't.
There's people walking around with purple and green hair. So, right.
Exactly. And so, I mean, I'm.
And the other thing is, like, you
I'm
can
not
do
beat myself up.
You can do a redhead or a brunette, and it's a pretty similar color. But when you think about when someone says someone's blonde, there's so many variations of blonde where you could be like my daughter, where she's like a platinum blonde, where it's almost white, all the way to a yellowish blonde, like a, that summer blonde color. So, there's no wrong way to do that.
Yeah.
No. And there's no doubt, there's absolutely no doubt that the hardest thing to paint are people.
100%.
The hardest thing.
Yep.
Because there's something about the human eye, like you can get a box car and it looks like a box car. You can get like an ATV or even a Canada Goose. But there's just something, we're so conditioned, like our eyes are so good at figuring out what's real and what isn't when it comes to people.
And I've asked some modelers. George Stelios is one when we went up to visit him, and I asked him if he painted all those people, because there's many thousands of people on his thing, and he says, "Heavens no, I buy them already painted." He said, "If I did that, he said, I would never have got this done." And I know for a fact that Doug has also bought people that are already painted as well.
Just save your time.
Sure. And the other thing too, there are people that specialize in painting people, and I mean, there's some amazing people painters,
right?
People that paint people, as there. And I mean, I'm not one of them. I can sort of. Well, you see what my level is.
It's good.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's not the greatest. But the other thing too is it also depends on the scale, because I've seen some unbelievable painted people, but they always tend to be O scale.
Yeah.
Like the bigger the scale, the easier it is to paint. For sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, I mean, and the funny thing is, I saw a ton of N scale people, and how people end up painting those.
My goodness, I can't imagine.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's I wouldn't have the.
I'll stick with our scale for now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Until my eyes get to the point where I need to go to O.
Yeah. Well, everything looks fantastic in O scale. I mean, I'll print something out in HO, and I'm happy with it. And then an O scale order will come in, and I'm like, oh my God, look at all the detail. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. So, well, Brett, do you have any more questions?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, we covered 2.5 hours, almost 2.5 hours worth of stuff. Bernard, there's one part here where
this is rivaling on one of our longest episodes.
There's one story that you told us prior to coming on to the recording that I wanted to know if you would be comfortable sharing. It's more of a sports story, but it's still a cool history story.
Oh, yes, please share.
So if you don't mind sharing that, then we're going to call it a wrap.
Hockey Nuts, everybody knows out there. We're Hockey Nuts. We were talking before the show with Bernard about the about hockey in general.
Well, I think I brought up doing a Stanley Cup mini print, and then you were like, "Well, actually, I have a funny story." So if you don't mind,
I do.
If you don't mind sharing that, we'll call that one, the capstone of tonight's podcast.
Yes.
There you go. Nothing to do with mini prints, but a funny Stanley Cup story. So yes, it did come up, and I think I said something like, "I have a funny Stanley Cup story." So here it is. I grew up with a family story. You get these shaggy dog family stories that, you never know are really true or not. And I was always told that my grandfather, who I'm named after, my mother's father, his initials are in the bottom of the Stanley Cup. And it's like, how could that possibly be true? So the family story goes something like this. Probably the 1930s or the 1940s, my grandfather, my mom's dad, was working at a jeweler in Montreal called Burke's, and that would kind of be like the Tiffany's of Canada.
Okay.
So a very high-end, metalsmith jeweler. And the Stanley Cup came in for repair. I guess it was dented or bumped or, they needed some work on it. So apparently the story goes that Grandpa Barney and some of the other guys who worked on the cup rather cheekily carved their initials into the bottom of the Stanley Cup. So that's the family story for years and years and years. And remember, this probably happened like 80 years ago. So for years and years and years, there's been this story that Grandpa Barney's initials are in the bottom of the Stanley Cup. Well, how would you ever know if that's true or not?
Right.
It sounds like one of those crazy stories that, couldn't possibly.
You'd have to win the Stanley Cup to prove it.
Right. But what an amazing family story, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
It's kind of like a shaggy dog tail, right?
Right.
So fast forward to 3 years ago, I'm in the States at a conference. I'm sitting with a guy, and I hear, he's like 2 seats over, and I hear out of the corner of my ear, he's going on about how he was just over at his friend's house, and his friend had the Stanley Cup at his house. And I don't know whether he was friends with a team member, or I think the Stanley Cup goes around. Like you can have it at your house, or there's some way that it tours around. So somehow this guy got his hands on the Stanley Cup, and he was showing pictures of it. And he was showing pictures of the top of it and the sides of it, and he had taken pictures of the bottom of it. So I said to him, "Why in the world do you have pictures of the bottom of the Stanley Cup?" He said, "Because no one ever takes pictures of the bottom of the Stanley Cup." So I'm like, "Okay, let me see those." So I'm looking on this guy's iPhone, and I'm sort of scrolling through the pictures of the bottom of the Stanley Cup, and I'm sort of using my fingers to pinch it up and zoom and zoom and zoom, and sure enough, there are my grandfather's initials,
which is amazing.
In the bottom of the Stanley Cup. So the family story was true. I'm not sure when or where or how, other than what I've been told. But yes, sure enough, there are the initials, and I've got the photograph. I snapped the photograph and I immediately texted it to my mom and said, that family story we've heard for years. Well, here are the initials, clear as day.
Right, you can confirm it.
That is the coolest
I photographic
story.
evidence.
Yeah.
I know.
And we're hockey nuts, so we eat
Stanley
that up.
Yeah, I know. So that's my one connection to the Stanley Cup.
Which is, you have direct lineage to it, which is really cool. So
I guess my maternal grandfather got close enough and hands-on enough that he could carve in.
Right. And how many people since, which is neat to think about, how many people since then have lifted it or held it or taken it to a party or a parade, and there were the initials were traveling along with it there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think you could get away with something like that these days.
No, you would definitely be in big trouble now.
You know what's another great correlation between the story and Bernard? Is his grandfather was a jeweler, who worked with very fine, detailed things that were artistic.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Okay? And now he works with the same kind of thing. He's creating something amazing and small and tiny,
right?
Yeah, and delicate, like jewelry would be. It's you're like the jeweler of model building or diorama building,
right?
In a way, you are.
Please don't make me carve my initials into the bottom of each tiny little mini print.
Every mini print, Bernard said he's going to carve his initials to the bottom of. No.
Well, I have a friend of mine who is a jeweler, and he works out of his own home. He's very, very good. He's contracted out by all your big name chain jeweler places that you go to malls and stores and things like that everywhere. And these same well-known companies contact him, and he does contractual work for them, but he also runs his own business as well. And he designs these most beautiful pieces with full gems and everything, amazing stuff. And then he sells them to these companies, his own design works. He sends them his work and the photos, and then they contract him out to do some of this for them. Anyhow, I helped him when he moved from Oregon to Pennsylvania. I helped him move his stuff, his equipment. We went to school together. He originally lived in this area, and now he moved back. Well, I helped him move some of the equipment in because it's very heavy into his new home that he had built, into his shop. And I'm telling you, they work with the same. Well, obviously it's a different type of thing, but they work with. He has some of the most amazing 3D printers, scanners. The different type of design equipment that you would probably be very familiar with yourself, Bernard. It's just amazing stuff, and the prices of it. Oh my gosh, and the equipment he's working with, it's insane. But I think anybody would in what we do, regardless. I don't make things like that. Brett has a 3D printer, but what my friend does, what you do, we look at that as modelers, all of us do, and we can all appreciate the fine work and detail and craftsmanship and the time and effort it must take, and the long amount of studying and looking into resources and learning it yourself to do it. It's truly not just a business; it's an art for you. And I think that's amazing. Well,
it's definitely it's a passion. It's you couldn't do it, you wouldn't do it,
right.
unless you were all in.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love.
And for whatever reason, it's and I have to say, if I know we're going on to the unlimited, never-ending 17-hour podcast.
Nothing touches Dave Ferry, but okay, go on.
Okay.
Or Howard Zane. My word.
That sounds like a challenge. The best part, and this is why I will say it and say it again and say it again, the best part of this whole thing is seeing the photographs of what people do. So when you post, the deer or the eagle, that is really gratifying for me because I love to see, the artistry. Because let's face it, it's the painting and where you place it in the scene that really makes it come to life.
Right.
So I love seeing that, and that's another reason why I encourage everyone to please go onto the Facebook page Miniprints 3D. Post your pictures, share your pictures. I derive a lot of pleasure from seeing that, and also meeting people, meeting really talented modelers. So, coming up and saying hi, popping by the booth if you're at Springfield, because, you can't do this in a vacuum, sitting in a little, space, in an old railway building, staring at a computer. Yeah, it's fun, but it's not the same as, getting out, meeting people, seeing photographs, having conversations.
Right.
At the end of the day, our hobby, it's all about the people.
It is. It truly is.
Yeah. And I think, you're not the only person we've had on the show as a manufacturer of something that has the same sentiment that you do, where, they love creating and they love making new stuff to sell. But at the end of the day, what they really enjoy the most is like seeing what the modeler takes and creates with what they have purchased from you. The purchase is great. 100%. Obviously that's what keeps your doors open. That's what allows you to do more and expand. And that's just a business. But what you are doing that for is the enjoyment of, like, my dad gets that deer or the eagle and you hear the story about it, or we post about it and someone else shares what they've built with what you've created for them. And that's really, I think, the heart of why a lot of you and a lot of other manufacturers do what they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
Can't top that.
Yeah. Hey.
Well, sir, I think on that note, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But, I'm telling you, we had a great time having you on the show. When I don't know if you're planning on coming down to Timonium in the spring, but if
probably
you are
in the fall again.
In the fall, then
we
will definitely come down. I promise you.
I want to be scanned.
Will be there and we're going to hang out.
I'm not going to lie. I want to get scanned. I don't know how. I gotta get scanned.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Well,
Me too.
and I'll tell you, I was. Here we go. The never-ending podcast.
It's okay.
I was in Pennsylvania in July of this year, and it was unbelievable. Like, I had so much fun. Like, there's so much railroad infrastructure.
Oh yeah.
I was around Reading.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's like you're in steel industry.
Oh my God, we rode the what was the railroad? We rented a bud car. There were 50 of us, so we were on a bud car. We had the bud car for the day out of Reading, and we traveled on the. Oh, I'm blanking. Is it the Reading and Northern? There's a really profitable short line that runs a tourist railroad.
There's a few of them out in that area.
Is that the? Oh, wait. I'm blanking as well. I know what you mean.
Reading and is it the Reading and Northern?
Maybe that's it. There's a
Reading Northern. It's just Reading Northern.
I think it's the Reading and Northern.
Yeah.
I think it's the Reading and Northern. They're based out of Port Clinton, and they have
Reading Blue Mountain and Northern Railroad.
Yeah, they have a really, really thriving. Oh God, I could do 3 hours on this. They have a really thriving short line. It's really, really nice to see a short line.
Yep.
That is just expanding, and it's like just so many. Like their freight revenues were going up 10% a year, and they were just like adding customers, and we really had free reign of the whole line for a day, and they were explaining everything to us. And they were just setting all sorts of records for freight revenue and traffic, and it was unbelievably successful. And they also run excursion trains. So we had this unbelievable RDC-1 bud car for the day, and we went, we basically were on it for an entire day. We kind of went 3 hours one way, stopped, and then came 3 hours back the other way. And I was absolutely blown away. I went to Strasbourg for the first time.
Oh, Strasbourg's great.
3 hours just on that.
And the museum's there.
So
it's all in our backyard.
So anyway, I had never experienced anything like that because we have tourist railroads up here, but not in the density. I couldn't sort of turn around without seeing an excursion train or a tourist railroad or the rail infrastructure, the tourist infrastructure was nothing I'd ever experienced. All of which to say is I can't wait to get back to Pennsylvania to experience more of that. So I'm sure our paths will cross again in the near future.
Oh,
And now that you have our contact info, if you're ever in the future heading into PA, just give us a shout. If we're available,
100%.
we'd like to meet up.
Yeah, there's the Harrisburg.
Well,
there's the Harrisburg and Enola rail yards, which are huge. At one
monstrous.
point, at one point they controlled all rail traffic going in and out of the whole Northeast.
Well, and corridor. you have the whole Steelton steel yard there with all the industrial train tracks and stuff and freight.
And west is the Horseshoe Curve and Altoona.
It never ends.
I've never been to.
Pennsylvania is very rich in railroad history, whether it's short lines or massive, huge scale things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'd never experienced anything like it, and I experienced a little bit of that at Timonium on the way down because I stayed at the Station Inn in Crescent.
Oh yeah,
which was a lot of fun, and I think I'd like to do. I mean, we'll see what things look like, but if I'm doing Springfield in January, it might be a stretch to go back February because I do have to feed the printers, but I could certainly see myself doing Timonium again in the fall in the October show.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely come down. I'll talk to them. We did it one time before. We set up our own table down there, modeled, and if you're coming, maybe we'll go do that again. We stayed there at the hotel with everybody at Timonium and spent the whole weekend, drank a lot of beers, and
it was a great show.
Yeah. It's a good time down there. So.
Yeah,
but
it really was. Yeah.
All right.
Well, it sounds to me like a date, and
definitely
it sounds to me like it'll be less than 2 years before I talk to you guys again. So
we will not. We will do our best to make sure it's not 2 years. So
yes.
All righty.
All right. You got it, Bernard. Thank you for being on with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
All right, later.